Okay, the stream is live. I forgot to post it around that I was doing a stream, so I'm gonna take a second. And since I assume people will be interested in Unital Ring in general, you know, it's gonna be helpful if I take a minute or two for people to actually come around as I try posting this on Twitter and stuff. But what we're basically gonna do here is, it's quite basic as you can guess from the title. I'll be sharing my opinions about Unital Ring in general. We have 6 volumes so far that's been published by Reki Kawahara, as well as looking at your opinions, which you have shared quite a lot of when I asked them about a week ago, both on YouTube as well as on my Twitter post, and I'll be responding to some of those criticisms and praises as well. A lot of them are warranted, of course. That's basically what we're gonna be going through. Just let me quickly post this on Twitter. Come join chat. What's the link for this? I'm gonna hope I am pasting the correct link. By the way, early on, if you could tell me if the voice levels are okay with the background audio and my own voice, that would be great, because I don't usually do these kinds of streams. I usually play games and my voice levels are already adjusted for that, but for this kind of thing, I could use feedback if there is anything wrong going on. Let me post this on my channel as well. Discord, I mean. There we go. And that means we are ready. Hey there, Opartox, Philia, Major Wolf, welcome. Sorry for making you guys wait for like, how long has it been? 2 minutes, probably, 2.5. And, well, about 1.5 weeks ago, I finally had the motivation to continue reading Sword Art Online Unital Ring 6 and finish it properly. And to be frank, this final volume has been more or less my favorite Unital Ring volume since the very first one that established this new arc. And, well, that's been kind of a problem. If you've been following me for more than a couple years, you probably do know, you know, I did not always have the best opinion of Unital Ring, although it's a lot more nuanced than what some people may have you believe about me. My general opinion is that Unital Ring, in general, has been a caliber atmosphered story where you get a lot of general time with these characters in terms of day to day and how they just hang out with each other. However, rather than being 1/3 of a volume, it is now 6 volumes and still going. There are plenty of great moments in them. However, the more time passes, the more of them I forget. Like, I have not forgotten earlier stuff, especially Alicization stuff, because most of them don't really stand out. Most of them do not feel like significant moments within the plot. It feels like things are happening in the plot, but they're not particularly progressing things. And that's one of the main complaints that we will see when we look at my opinions, as well as plenty of your opinions too. And if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I have it open right in front of me. I'll be responding directly to you as well. But otherwise, I asked your opinions about Unital Ring after I finished Unital Ring 6. And a lot of you guys have responded, especially on Twitter. We got some great stuff. But I just want to start with the community post real quick to see what we got. Okay. Miles Morales. I also have responses on Facebook, but I don't want to show them here because Facebook, it has real names and I don't want to do that. Anyways, love the Unital Ring setting and want to see where it goes. That all of us, mate. All of us want to see that. The problem is it's not going anywhere. But I'll get back to that. Glad to see Underworld back. I'm not all that thrilled about seeing Underworld back. You getting more time in the spotlight. This is one of the main praises about Unital Ring. A lot of characters are getting a lot more screen time, which is absolutely great. The problem is, in my opinion, it just goes to show that whenever we focus on a character that does not have that presence in the story, it becomes very clear that they cannot carry the story on their shoulders to begin with. Like in Unital Ring 5, we got a huge Shilika chapter, and it's a really great written one. We rarely have such action-focused chapters where Shilika is in the spotlight. However, what happens is that Shilika does not have a strong presence in the narrative. So it really feels like she is having this entire chapter go passively, and at the end she has a critical moment and kind of does the thing that she has to, and doesn't feel satisfying at all in general, because her overall impact on the narrative is just not a strong character. There is no kind way of saying this. Shilika is not a character who can carry a story. In the same scene, Shinon appears plenty of times, but she does not have the main perspective. She appears as a side character who has plenty of screen time. You see, Shinon is a character who can actually carry a narrative, and I would have much rather preferred having Shinon in that situation, taking the lead, or at least having the camera behind her back. Not in the sense that Ito would understand from the first 2 seasons on Northern Scale. But Shinon as a character can carry the plot. Similarly, Kirito and Asuna can carry the plot. Alice, no matter how much I dislike her character, she can carry the plot. Whereas someone like Shilika or Lisbeth, they're generally more passive characters, where they are shaped by the plot itself. And I think the amount of screen time that we're getting with those side characters, that, well, yes, having more screen time with side characters is great, goes to show that a lot of them are not quite cut out for being the main character, even for a chapter. That's one of my main complaints actually about Unital Ring. Well, it's trying to do something really nice, the characters are just not set up for it. Should I actually have some pictures somewhere on the screen, just so it's not just my face? I think I can do that, you know, we're just gonna have this. Actually, these pictures, I can just scroll through them as things go, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna need them anyways at certain points. So how about I launch one, put it towards the left side of the screen. There we go. You stay there just fine. How's the screen looking? These are things I usually should take care of before the stream actually begins. Not way after stream actually begins. Okay, how about if we do this? The chat is going to cover a whole lot of it. How can I make this work? I can pull the right side a bit more. And then you'll see my... Yeah, that's fine. That seems to be working. Yep. Perfect. That is... Yeah, that's not too much. If I trim this ever so slightly, I think that is going to work perfect. There we go. Everything's set. Once again. Hey Polsky, welcome. Hey there with the person with the alphabet that I can't read. Welcome, welcome. Least favorite, lack of full explanation about Eolyne creating Yu-Gi-Oh! Bait in the process. And that is pretty much one of 3 main complaints, I'd say. A lot of people feel like, me included, the Eolyne plot has been going too long without any significant payoff, and to be frank, Reki feels that way too. If you read his afterwards, he's constantly apologizing about not sharing any new information about Eolyne and all that kind of stuff. But that being self-aware does not take away from the criticism. The only reason Eolyne exists, is to create that Yu-Gi-Oh bait, and it. When I was reading UR6, at some point, Eolyne completely disappears from the plot because the perspective changes elsewhere, and we don't get to see him until the very end. It literally makes me go, finally he's gone, finally the characters can actually focus on something. Because whenever Eolyne is on the screen, whether it is Kirito, whether it is Alice, whether it is Selka, whether it is Tease or Ronye, everyone just thinks, oh my god, this person looks exactly like Yu-Gi-Oh! But none of them do anything about it. And that really annoys me as well, because that goes against their character too, especially when Kirito spends 3 volumes with this guy, looking at his face, constantly crying whenever he looks at his face, and Eolyne constantly being self-conscious about this. Nobody once asks, hey, you look exactly like this person I knew from 200 years ago. Can we ask some questions, please? And that would be perfectly in character for these. Like, for Kirito, that's basically his boyfriend. For Tease, that's basically his boyfriend. For Alice, that's basically her childhood friend. And then for Tsuberg, for S30, that's basically the person who broke her shackles, in a sense, defeating Administrator Quinella and all that kind of stuff. Not a single person actually asks a question towards Eolyne about why he looks the way he does. He may not have the answer, perfectly fine, but one person, someone has to ask. Because when we have 3 books back to back, people staring blankly at his face and crying, yet not saying a word, that becomes kind of a problem. For the narrative, for the characters, both. That is not okay. The 2 storylines swapping back and forth is really hard to track. Well, personally, I don't find it hard to track, but to me it feels like Kawahara himself is having a hard time to track what's happening, or rather pace them accordingly, because the 2 plots, they're constantly intertwining with each other, and I think that's given more issues to Kawahara to actually focus his story in a single direction than it does to the audience. Although, I shouldn't be saying this, but because the way I read Unital Ring 5 and Unital Ring 6 was so fragmented due to a lack of motivation to do so in the past 2 years that it got a bit troublesome for me as well, mainly because I was basically reading 1 chapter every couple months. The way I read them was, I read a bit as I was flying back to Turkey, I read a bit as I was flying back to Austria from Turkey, I read a bit as I'm taking the bus to the university, I read like 5 pages when we have a break in between the lectures and all that kind of stuff. And due to how little progression or significant moments there are in the continuous story, at some point it gets really hard to map certain events to certain things. So that's the main problem I am having, further fueled by the fact that I am reading extremely fragmented, although finally I'm done, and Reki... The new Accel World book is coming before the next Unital Ring book, right? In February 9, the Accel World 28 is coming, and we still keep hoping that he is actually writing the next Unital Ring book. So the coping mechanism is, once Accel World releases 28, we're gonna get an announcement for Sword Art Online Volume 28, hopefully. Hey, Emil's actually here, welcome! How to fly from Ohio to Qatar soon, but I just want to say Unital Ring is at its best when Shikime Mutashina is around. Partially agree. I would have fully agreed if the final portion of Unital Ring 6 was not so good. I really enjoyed the final portion of Unital Ring 6. But otherwise, I completely agree. The Unital Ring game part, 100% absolutely best when Shikimi or Mutasina is around. Eolyne just feels like neither, of course. Hey, Dralga, welcome. When will you make new best SAO game list? I don't have an answer for it. I was planning to do it before Last Collection. Last Collection came out, I kind of lost a lot of my motivation. Maybe after its DLCs are out and the game finally takes its final shape, maybe then I can have a video about the entire game series. One for the history of the gameverse, one for what the best game is. But generally speaking, just play them in sequence, start with Hollow Fragment. That remains the correct answer either way. So Accel World is releasing an yes, February 9, Accel World 28. Do you think Underworld portion is a little bit stretched for no reason? I wouldn't say no reason. It is stretched for a reason. I can give in once someone says that, but the way it's stretched, I don't think the pros outweigh the cons at that point. That's my take. There are valid reasons for it to be stretched, because there are a lot of world building to do for this next conflict and all that kind of stuff, but I feel like it is not done in the best way that it could have been done. Can I ask a question that is not Unital Ring related? Sure, you can. I will answer in a second, because if I go through the responses at this pace, we're gonna be here until tomorrow. Okay, these are a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. Thank you, Luna Codes. Seeing the supporting characters have more time to shine in Unital Ring was especially surprising with Shirika leading the raid. Yep, as I said, I covered this extensively. It's great that side characters are having such huge amounts of screen time. The problem is, some side characters just cannot carry the narrative on their back. Not the fault of the characters, it's just the way they are written. Watching them all come up with really creative solutions in Unital Ring, especially given how fast everything there progresses. Okay, that is an interesting like, because if I were to look at the exact same point, them being, let's say, creative, it's fine once or twice, but when Kirito is consistently finding stupid exploits just to go through impossible situations, that's what's getting old for me. Like, I think it was the first Unital Ring book, where the Misha with the bear. Yep, the first book had two action sequences. One is a huge thorn spike bear. It's technically a boss that rushes Kirito, Asuna, and others' location. And it's impossible to beat. They're literally level 1 or at least level 2, 3, very beginner. And this guy is an actual boss that protects the cave nearby. They can't beat it. What happens is Kirito just summons all the logs that they have collected from the top of the log cabin, so they drop with some momentum and actually kill the bear. The first time, I'm on board. That is a great out-of-the-box thinking and solution. Well, then Kirito goes and uses the crafting mechanic, where if you're trying to craft something, similar to the games you have right now, Fortnite, Minecraft, whatever, if you're in the crafting menu, you have to plop the item somewhere for it to be crafted, right? And as you're looking for a spot to plop it, it appears as this translucent object, where it shows whether you can plop it there or not and all that kind of stuff. You know it from all the other games. And he uses that to confuse the enemies and have them back out, lose their composure and all that kind of stuff. You know, twice creative thinking, that's great. And that's an actual game mechanic being exploited against other humans to confuse them. That's double great in my opinion. But when stuff like this keeps happening, where they're getting victories in ways they are not supposed to get, that really starts getting annoying. One, from the game lore perspective, the cardinal system is taking care of this entire thing. Well, cardinal system we assume. I don't think it's actually said, but it's still the seed package, so it has to be cardinal or an equivalent. it fixes shit like this, you know? When it sees something has happened in a way that it should not have happened, you only get one chance, you don't get it again, and it fixes it. And the thing is, there are so many broken stuff that Kirito or others exploit in this way that it starts to make you question of Cardinal's capabilities like you have not done before, despite the fact that Alicization exists. That's as absurd as the Cardinal's balancing and stuff got. And secondly, from a narrative standpoint, from me reading the book as the reader, you know, if they're gonna keep getting out of everything with excuses that should not have existed, that's called an ass pull. And if an ass pull keeps happening over and over and over and over and over and over and over, there comes a point where I'm just gonna say, hey, that's a conflict, but I'm sure there's gonna be a stupid way we're gonna get out of it, and I do not care about this conflict anymore. And Alicization has reached that point with War of Underworld. Unital Ring is very close to reaching it in Unital Ring, the Underworld side of the story that's already established by War of Underworld. Let me look at the chat real quick before I miss things. Are you still gonna be doing SAO Progressive Explained videos? They are still in my backlog, but the way that I keep filling my backlog and not doing anything about it, it makes me start questioning my own resolve about ever getting to them. I do want to do them before the summer of 2024, before AGGO begins. Do you think that Dorothy is a reference to the Wizard of Oz, being basically a foreigner in a strange land, having to deal with Tornado and Wicked Witch, TAL? Could be. It kind of fits in with Alice in Wonderland thing with Alice as well. So that could be part of the inspiration, yes. Oh, you already said that, yes, I agree. My concern is that Moon Cradle is still not concluded and we are now at two different timelines of Underworld. That is actually a great thing that I would eventually touch upon going through all of these, but may as well do it now. Moon Cradle is unfinished, yes. The problem is, you know, when people say you have to have read Moon Cradle to be able to enjoy or understand Unital Ring, that one I do not agree with, because the reality is Moon Cradle is both unfinished and in a sense it is unstarted. Because it's not finished because we don't get the result of the Rebellion of the Four Empires incident with the Black Emperor storyline. Only one left. It's not wait. It's Black Emperors because 3 recreated emperors, having been recreated with clay looking darker than themselves, only one of them remained alive, and Moon Cradle is going to be completed from the looks of it in Unital Ring. The Black Emperor's narrative is still going with Agmarl the something, Vestarath has returned, and that's basically the continuation of Moon Cradle, you know? That part is settled. But the people saying you need to have read Moon Cradle to be able to understand Unital Ring, I ask those people, were you able to understand Moon Cradle despite the fact that we had absolutely zero stories about the Rebellion of the Four Empires? Yes, you were able to understand Moon Cradle without having any story about the Rebellion of the Four Empires. So the reality is, you don't need to read Moon Cradle to be able to understand anything about Unital Ring's Underworld portion. It's fine, they give you enough information, you can easily work with that information in Unital Ring. You don't necessarily need to read Moon Cradle at all costs. That is not true. That is something I really needed to address at some point, so thank you for bringing me to that one. I wish Mutasina was explored more. She really felt like a good character who can pose a big threat, as we know. She had a lot of people under her control. I wish her portion could have lasted long. That's one of the weak parts of Unital Ring. Everything is a mystery. Everything is a mystery, and none of those mysteries are properly progressing. And yeah, we're definitely gonna learn more about Mutasina, especially because eventually this has to tie into Accel World as well. But Mutasina in general was what made the Unital Ring portions interesting. have some tension, have some stakes. And right now we're trying to go into a progressive direction with the Unital Ring narrative, and we'll see if the Elf War campaign with the Dark Elf stuff, whether that's gonna turn into something interesting, or if it's just gonna be more member berries, trivia, past, references, and all that kind of stuff for no real reason, much like Mr. Eolyne over here for the past 3 volumes actually. Okay, I can return here. Watching them all come up with really creative solutions. Oh, we actually went through that. Argo? Can't complain. Can't disagree with that one. We meet Egil's wives, Trish, and the other Apodei players. Apodei, Apocalyptic Date. Alright, that's... How is the Japanese shortening of this one? Is it not Apodeto? Not Apodei. Doesn't matter. Apocalyptic Date, it's a post-apocalyptic game where people play as furries, and yeah, it's gonna be explored probably in the next volume with the way things are going right now. The ALO side is now getting intermingled with the progress of Apocalyptic Date players, so we'll definitely get to see more of them. Getting more of the history of Underworld since Kirito and Asuna left. Actually, we barely have learned anything, and I may be on the unpopular side, but on some things like progression, I don't think we need to learn all that much. Like, I feel like I don't need a paragraph every single time where Reki wants to say, hey, Asuna loves cooking, so she discovered kitchen plumbing systems. That's an actual thing, I am not exaggerating. So those kinds of things, I feel like we can actually be better off by not having at all. But yeah, I don't know, some things I think we can just slide by saying, hey, it's the magic system of this world. Like, the same thing goes for Dragoncrafts as well. I don't need extensive engineering solutions as to what they are doing with the sacred arts. All I need to know is that there's a canister, it has thermal elements, and they're exploding the thermal elements. I don't need an explanation as to how there's cryogenic elements around it to keep it cold, or what else, you know? It's the magic system. That is fine. If you try going into the extensive engineering side of it, I'm going to be questioning a lot more than your magic system. Because if you go on trying to explain the engineering behind how a Dragoncraft works, I am going to question how Kirito or anyone in Underworld knew exactly how a plane, how a rocket, and how all those little bits and pieces would have worked in just 2 years after War of Underworld. You know? If you try being technical, in Turkish we'd call it Hodri Meydan, which is more like a, I don't know, I'll challenge you on that one, in a sense. Let's put everything on the table, because yeah. But a little bit more history, as long as they are not provided as member berries, as long as they have significance for the plot, I welcome all the history explanation. However, if we're getting random mentions like, oh, we never got to learn who Ronye married, did she? It's like, you're not only bringing something up for no reason, but you're also not answering it properly. And at that point, I'm like, how about you don't mention it then? How about that? There's a lot of things with the member berry situation with trivia and references that really grinds my gears. The tie-ins with OG Aincrad, really curious to see where the Liu Sulan thing goes, especially since Kismel is one of the most enjoyable parts of Progressive. Well, we've already seen that sort of thing in the non-canon video games, referring to Hollow Realization, where we had the entire, you know, the Great Separation was being created, as well as Kismel being there in some side events. I'm curious to see what the books do with it, especially interesting since Kirito already has been with his memories of Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, I don't get the link with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff, but in terms of the Unital Ring side, I am very interested what's gonna come of the Unital Ring world, because the common theory that we have right now is it's the world that lies underneath Aincrad after the Great Separation has taken place, because there are huge discs all around the map where it seems like the world has been removed completely, and the players keep coming across these huge circular areas, which it's presumed that these are the individual floors that literally got lifted up from the ground with the Great Separation to create Aincrad up above. So that's gonna be an interesting bit, but the problem is that's literally the only interesting bit that's in the story that I'm kind of interested in, because it has nothing to do with the plot. It's just, hey, this is the ground floor for Aincrad. Cool. What am I supposed to do with that information? Nothing. It does not change anything about the plot. It's just an interesting trivia fact if it ends up being coming true. And when you have a story that is so bloated and so lacking focus, every single one of these interesting stuff that you sprinkle all around, it just gets the story more bloated. So, I mean, you will hear this a lot depending on how long this stream is going to be, but the Unital Ring requires a lot more focus in its core narratives rather than sprawling around like a tree. Let me have a look at the chat before continuing. You think that they're going to mess with us and have Nobunaga Shimazaki voice Eolyne as well? I absolutely think they will, yeah. Nobu will definitely voice Eolyne whenever we get the Unital Ring anime. And Brandon Winkler is definitely going to voice Eolyne in the English dub. There's no other way. Integral Factor has the same problem as Unital Ring at this point. It feels like the story has slowed down a lot. Yeah, ever since the post-Floor 100 has begun. But the problem is, Integral Factor, they're only trying to progress the actual conflict that's at hand with the full-sized floors, whereas smaller-sized floors, they're just random adventures. So I feel like if they integrate the smaller-sized, event-sized floors, single-map floors, into the main narrative rather than having random adventures, they would have been so farther ahead so far with a lot more player interest in those stories. I really enjoy stories even still. It's just that we are coming to a point where it's been 2 years, I think 2 years or 1.5 years, don't remember exactly, that the main story hasn't progressed meaningfully at all, aside from slight reveals about Notte. But that's Integral Factor. I'll move on. I'm not gonna ramble about it. Do you think Reiki as a writer has a good knack for sci-fi stuff, like in Accel World and Alicization, and overall has good story, but he fails to dig deeper? No, I don't think so. I think he has. He is really creative with all these kinds of stuff. He likes looking at theories and implementing them into his narratives. He really can dig deep. His only problem is, well, two problems. One, he's not subtle. Mr. Yu-Gi-Oh! Bait has been here for 3 volumes as very blatant Yu-Gi-Oh! Bait with no subtlety at all. And two, he has a habit of writing too much. We know this. Mickey knows this, his editor, the anime staff knows this, everyone knows this. He writes too much. Someone needs to keep him check, which is exactly why his side stories, where he's limited to a low amount of pages or, you know, written real estate, that's where his stories really impact you as a reader. Mother's Rosario, Sister's Prayer, The First Day, Hopeful Chant, Cordial Course, they're all incredible stories, and they are 1/3 of a single volume long. So someone needs to like put him on a leash, and that someone is obviously Kazuma Miki, his editor, and actually tell him, yo, you have these limits, please stick to them. Once that is done, he's an incredible author. once he's let loose and do whatever he wants, he just writes way too much and the narrative loses its focus. We go elsewhere and do that B plot, C plot, D plot, fucking we go up until the Z plot. It's just too much. That's his biggest Achilles heel. UR map is basically Einground post-separate. Exactly. That's the idea behind that theory, yes. Saw this and wanted to give my opinion. Unital Ring is Miles Morales gamer. Yes. We had your opinion, man. You were the first in line. We had your opinion at the beginning of the stream. Oh, you added a bit actually. And it just doesn't have the same magic that Volume 1 to 20 had for me. I'll interject on that one. The thing about Volumes 1 to 20 is it's kind of a disappointment, I know all too well from different series. It's the difference between the time where enough things have been released that you binge watch it, so your honeymoon period with Volume 1 continues to last because you're binge watching it still, and switching over to a yearly or 1.5 yearly format. It makes you start forgetting things, it pushes you slightly away from that hype moment or whatever interest you had. I mean, the biggest example, sorry. The biggest example I can give you from my personal life, the Percy Jackson series. I read all 5 Percy Jackson books upon release. Then the Olympian series, the Heroes of Olympus, began, its sequel, and it changed into a yearly or bi-yearly release at that point. And it's an incredible story. The ending of this book, it is among my most favorite endings, which always makes me remember, hey, this was the original Kirtan Asana feeling that I had before I even got to know Kirtan Asana with Percy and Annabeth. I read this with the best cliffhanger ending I have ever read, and then I forgot the series existed. I literally got stuck here. And the new Disney Plus show keeps making me remember that I'm gonna reread this entire book and then finish the final book that comes after this. That's the main difference, probably why you're not having the same feeling between 1 to 20 and 21 and onwards. It's the release schedule really changes your perception about how you consume a series. Yeah, Percy Jackson series is starting on the 20th of December, by the way. I strongly recommend you check it out. It's a beautiful series. And if you can, of course, go read the books. Always go read the books. Rick Riordan does not disappoint, especially if you're interested in mythology, whether it's Greek, Roman, Egyptian. And he has a Nordic series as well, as I have been led to know. Norse gods, not my favorite. Hey, well, I've been watching SAO and I think it's so good. Are we really gonna get this animated? And also the whole season 4, I mean, in this Unital Ring novel, there's no Kirisuna. There's plenty of Kirisuna, mate. And as for when it's gonna get animated, why is Nightbot not around, actually? He should have a timer telling people, hey, if you're wondering about the anime, please check this video instead. That's a question I am kind of tired of answering. Understandable question, not blaming you, but I cannot answer every single person every single time. So if Nightbot comes back and starts spamming that on a 10-minute timer, that is actually going to be beautiful. Please, Nightbot. We'll see if he comes up. We'll see. I get the feeling that Ricky has... I wouldn't know about that. Combined maybe with ADHD. No, he's just extremely busy and he likes writing Kirtan Asana. To be frank, many people, when they're writing, just read what they write. Everyone does it. Everyone just likes sprawling around and immediately address an idea they receive. That's how normal people write. Good writers will know what to trim and which direction to go, but generally, that kind of stuff, it's the editor's responsibility to keep things on track. It's an entirely different profession, because an editor will be able to look from the outside and say, hey, this thing you think is really interesting doesn't sound all that interesting. You need that outside perspective to be able to trim your ideas as well. That's... I wouldn't put it on Reki that much. You can say how much you are as it's still ongoing, but now it's okay. It does not have the magic like the previous arcs, but can't say much as the author left the plot hole. What plot hole? There is no plot hole. Most people don't know what a plot hole is. If you'd like to respond and tell me what the plot hole is, I'll be more than happy to address it. Do you think Reki should have just expanded the Aincrad arc with 10-11 volumes? Of course, not covering... No. If I keep responding to these, we're just gonna do exactly what Reki does, keep scrolling off in directions that that is not the topic of this stream. Aincrad arc is floor 74 and floor 75. Everything is side stories. That's where I'm gonna end that discussion, as simple as I can. Where were we? Interactions with Kikoka have been interesting. Kikoka is kind of the lighthearted, levity person. I enjoy having him around, but his scenes are not particularly interesting for me. Like, the Wrath staff right now have absolutely no relevance, despite the fact that we are investigating stuff for Wrath. Nice that Alice got to be reunited with Selka. It took 3 books. 3 books that ended with the exact same cliffhanger. Getting to see Tiza and Ronnie as adults, that's actually the start of a problem that we're gonna see a lot. If I can actually progress with these responses to me. The sections with Kirito and Eolyne invading the base felt a bit slow. That's on Admina. Yeah. Agree. It needed to be at a certain part because you're establishing an entire enemy faction as well as an entirely new technology, establishment, and all that kind of stuff. So it was slow, but I think it had merit in being slow. Unnecessary re-summarizations, info dumps. Reki is actually... He used to do a lot better with these. Especially with things like Alicization or Aincrad and all that kind of stuff, the early parts. Because what he did was, if Kirito or any character was having an idea about or trying to make a reference to a story that existed elsewhere, we always had like 3, maybe 4 sentences reminding us of what the event was, or for those who may not have read it, when the event had taken place. So something simple like when Kirito lets go of Klein, or... Nah, that's not the example. Sometime later. When you read the first day side story where Kirito comes across Copper, Kirito is like, I'm not sure if I deserve to have a friend after abandoning my previous one just because I prioritize myself. That's like a 2-3 sentence reference to Klein from volume 1, taking place in volume 8, early and late, I want to say, but it could be volume 7 as well. I always mix these two. It doesn't matter. He always used to have these small references to explain why Kirito is feeling a certain way he does. With Unital Ring, it really became a problem, and that's the problem where I keep referring to as member berries. It feels like we're no longer getting references that are vital to understand how a character is feeling or why they are acting a certain way, but rather we're getting references because Reki just wants to shout, "Hey, this is a golem boss. Remember Fuscus the Vacant Colossus back in the Progressive Scherzo of Deep Night?" Of course you do remember, Reki. I do remember Fuscus the Vacant Colossus. That is the best boss fight you have ever written. So, not only I don't need that reference because it does not have any effect on the current golem boss fight, more importantly, it hurts your current boss fight because your current boss fight is not as well written as the Fuscus boss fight. Don't do unnecessary references. don't have a dragon jet and randomly name it Zirfan? Why would Kirito name a dragon jet Zirfan? He came across that dragon in the Lisbeth side story once. Why? Why would you name it Zirfan? Why not Dorsal? Ornal scale exists. You could have named it Dorsal as the 91st boss fight. Or what was the name of the floor 7 dragon boss? The Accel? Okay, he may not have named it because he actually can't spell it or pronounce it himself. But still, needless references, please. Don't do that. If you have to summarize a certain thing to explain how a character feels or why they feel a certain way, sure, 2-3 sentences. You've always done that perfectly. But random references, I had enough of them. Kaibi, I have responded to you 3 or 4 times in the past 24 hours. Please, this time make it the last. No, Yujo is not coming back. Yujo is dead. And if he comes back, I will actually be really mad because there should be no way possible for him to return at this point. Why has Reki not released and talked about it? He is busy. Okay, finally continuing. Sad how the sword techniques, how limited the sword techniques in present day Underworld are, to the point that Steve and Laura were blown away by basic Ironclad. I actually mentioned this as I was reading it in SAO Wikia. We have a channel where we just share our reactions as we read them, kind of a live read and all that kind of stuff. And like 200 years ago, okay, you had a ruler that completely suppressed the evolution of combat skills to solidify their power. It's been 200 years. Maybe you should be able to learn more than 2 combo sword skills, right? And Stika and Laura, they are supposed to be one of the better ones in the Integrity Piloted. Like, there's absolutely no way, there's absolutely no reason why they should be so bad, so lacking in comparison to Tize and Ronye, who just pull off, what was it, Deadly Sins with 5 hits? That was probably it, yeah. And the way they explain it, like, as I said, 200 years ago, I understand, you know, people just weren't interested in actual combat, so it didn't matter. But the fact of the matter is, they talk about how you need to train and train and train and train to be able to pull off these sword skills. But the reality is, and that's also the way it's explained in the books, you hold a sword a certain way, the sword skill happens. That's literally it. Like, sure, you may need to train to gauge it well as to where to use which sword skill, but if you have a high priority sword, you just hold the sword in a specific way and the skill launches on its own. That does not require training. The training, in a sense, they imply, I should say, you need to up your level object control authority to be able to wield a high tier sword, etc, etc, etc. But you know what I mean. There is no training as to, if you hold your sword this way, it's gonna do this skill. That's literally a system thing. That's not your training thing. Hey Kirigahime, welcome. Mystic, welcome. Deadly Sins is the 7 one. What was the 5 one? Nova Ascension? Probably 5 hits. But I'm pretty sure it's Deadly Sins that Tize and Ronye uses, not the... So it's a 7 sword skill, yeah. There you go, Luna Codes. You learned something today if you ever watch this. The limitations, extreme regulation of incarnation usage in current day Underworld. I have no problems with the regulation by the authorities on incarnation. I have issues with how much power crept incarnation has become. And if I can go through all of the feedback here and actually get to a point where I can share my opinions directly from what I wrote in the Wikia server, I can actually get much more into that, because even though I love how serious the final bits of Unital Ring 6 has gotten, the incarnation, it's the worst it has ever been. And I have a lot to say on that one. No ways 10 hit. What was the 5-hit sword skill? Do I really need to check Wikia? SAO Wikia sword skills. Like the 5-hit skill that Kirito tried to use in the garden of the academy and accidentally lifted up dirt and had to duel Volo. Okay, 5 hits, 5 hits, 5 hits. I'm looking for 5 hits. There's not a single one with 5 hits. What the fuck? I'm absolutely sure there has to be one. Or was it an unnamed one? He just said, I'm gonna try something with 5 hits and see if it works. That could be it. Wait, I'm actually gonna check now. You made me interested. Thanks for giving me reasons to go out of my... Okay, where was it? Should be Alicization running. Definitely not turning, definitely running, yeah. Alicization running. He first used horizontal square. What the fuck? Why can I not find it? Okay, he tried to use vertical square. Is this already the duel with Volo? Yeah, that's already the duel with Volo. It's not as far as I want to go. Okay. Sorry, it's over here. I have the actual books. The reality of the matter is ebooks, I can just control F, control find. It makes it much easier. All 4 sword skills went off without a failure. That was enough to confirm, etc, etc. I look like I was able to show Lina a higher sword skill. The blue sword could achieve 4-part skills, but no matter how I tried, 5-parters would not work. What about this new sword? If I was going to test it out, etc. I squeezed the handle and slid my right foot forward, pulling the sword back to my left shoulder and imagining power building up inside it. Something at the root of my... There are no 5-hit sword skills. What are you talking about? I think I remember this. I'm pretty sure this was the topic of discussion like half a decade ago in the wiki as well. Someone asking, do you guys know what sword skill Kirito tried when training at the academy garden? Because there's no 5-hit sword skills, yeah. Anyways, okay, back to the chat. Hey Val, how you doing? Welcome. Yeah, both squares, vertical square and horizontal square, are 4-hit skills. Vertical square is the AoE one that goes vertically, and or the other way around. I always mix. Horizontal square is the AoE one because horizon is horizontal, and it's 4 hits AoE around you. And vertical square, it's single target DPS that Kirito uses against Volo during their duel. Hey Secret Cake, welcome. Blah 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 blah. Just got up, but I feel like the current writing is a combination of Reiki influenced too much by anime storytelling, as well as Miki not really caring about story integrity. I definitely agree with the fact that Miki is much more hands-off since the ending of Alicization, or rather Moon Cradle, let's say. So both progressives and Unital Ring suffer from very similar aspects. Okay, I'm gonna return here because that's only 2 responses we had. So that is Spanish. I have no idea what it says. Like all the times we went into Underworld, for me, those times were the times I am more invested. The least favorite are Unital Ring parts. Of course, there are some parts I liked when initially it was kind of slow and boring. Now I think about it, it makes sense, because most survival games, the start is always ... but no continuation. Interesting. But yeah, in Volume 1, it was slow, and I agreed with the fact, I agreed with the decision. Agreed is the wrong word. It's not up to me to agree or disagree. I enjoyed the slowness that it had because it was exploring this new world. Unital Ring 2, okay, I'm fine. We're still exploring this world. But Unital Ring 3, and it's still going slow in Unital Ring. That's when I started having a problem because this plot was not progressing. So I do agree with that one. However, until Mutasina completely disappeared after their big battle, that still was not a huge issue. I feel like it became a large issue after Mutasina disappeared because Mutasina, the tension, the narrative with Mutasina was carrying a lot of the Unital Ring side at that point. Oh yeah, speaking too fast, I'm getting dizzy. Just a second, I'm going to boil some water and maybe make some tea. Just a second. Val, Emil, respond to people. Have a nice chat. Okay, in 2 minutes, I need you guys to remind me that I have boiled water. How do normal people increase weapon control authority? Object control authority increases. You don't need to go into battles, necessarily. You can increase it by mundane tasks as well. Okay, where was I? Things like introduction of the concept of Unital Ring. I agree, that was very good. Especially the first conversion into Unital Ring. That was... if I switch this, the aspect ratio is going to change, so I'm not gonna... I am actually going to go back. This scene is so good. The way it plays with your expectations from Aincrad and the way Kirito and Asuna react in a different way that Alice does. I think that's one of the really highlights of Unital Ring very early on in the series. I really love that moment specifically. It was amazing and executed very well, I agree. It gave opportunity to have a character from other VR game. Yes, we got to see a lot more, much different worlds. And that is something I enjoy, and I hope we see a lot more as well. I think Reki can easily establish some contact with Bandai Namco on this front just to have different game ideas. Like, they don't need to be fleshed out, but mention some games and their genres just to establish a wider context for what that seed nexus really is. I think it is great that we now have knowledge about 6 or 7 games, but I think we at least need something like 20 or 25. And again, just simple examples. You know, it doesn't need to go in depth. It doesn't mean we're gonna encounter these characters and have in-depth battles with different mechanics. Just knowing the existence of different games and their context, I think that is valuable trivia information that can shape the general world of SAO and can turn into great Sword Online alternative stories. So, Miki, Kadokawa, it's probably in your best interest as well. Okay, side characters like Yui and others have a role to play. Yes, talked about it. Mutasina is amazing, and her antagonist role really played well. Wouldn't go that far. I really enjoy her in general, and the way she schemes and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, without Unital Ring progressing and us not knowing the motivations behind her or what she's even trying to do, we still need to learn a lot more about Mutasina slash Shikimi. Boiling water, perfect timing. Yeah. Regular. Oh no, I don't have a cup. You have a problem? There we go. Okay, remind me again in 3 minutes. Where did Val and Emil go? Right after I asked them to interact with the chat and answer their questions. This always happens. Val, why do you keep leaving me? Things I don't like. It's been 6 volumes, but we haven't met a middle point yet, and Underworld sometimes drag really a lot with no meaningful event. I do agree. It is obviously going to change with the next volume because shit hit the fan with the previous book's ending. But so far, absolutely. Underworld mostly drags and consists of member berries. And Unital Ring still is so far away from a reasonable endpoint, and then we have to switch into Interintelligence War as well. Like, it's gonna take a bit. It's gonna take a bit. One thing that irritates me is that hundreds of years were passed, but descendants literally just look like main characters. They should have genetic change. I can let this one slide. I can let this one slide because Stika and Laura were created to replace Tiza and Ronya. What I cannot let slide is the fact that, well, you created these characters to replace the previous characters, but then you brought back the previous characters from the dead by telling us they were not dead. Then why did you create these new ones to replace them if you were going to bring them back anyways and replace the replacements back? That's literally the main issue with Tiza and Ronya returning. And I think it was either Toka or Taruth who responded to me on Twitter, and I really want to get to their feedback as well, especially Mao's, because that's where the real meaty ones were. We're gonna go into that as well. Mutasina setup was amazing, but it kinda felt incomplete. It is incomplete. We're absolutely going to get more Mutasina. Absolutely going to get more Mutasina. That's not over. Like, the battle happened, she literally did not go to the meeting that she had with Asuna and all that kind of stuff. That is supposed to remain that right now. Oh, sorry, I didn't mention what it was. It's not boiling this time, it's just the tea bag is sitting in the water. It's not that urgent, but thank you. You see, the tea habits of Turkish people and Austrian people are quite different, I have learned in the past 8-9 years. I am not sure about the rest of the Western world, but when we have tea with tea bags, which we don't often use, we have special tea kettles. I'm pretty sure the British have them as well, where we actually have a boiling pot with a smaller pot inside that has tea, actual tea in it. But that's an entire tangent of a tangent. What we do with tea bags is that when we take it out, we actually wrap it around the teaspoon and squeeze it as well, because the best part actually stays in the tea bag, and when you squeeze it, that comes out too. I have learned that most people here don't do that, which... What are you, savages? It's the best part of the tea. Just get it back into your cup. Squeeze it. Hey Hero Satwar, welcome. Hey, it's a nice lively chat. Except Val and Emil have left apparently, who actually could answer questions so that I'd have less workload. Is all the sugar gone? Yes. Also, the setup of Kamura being Mutasina, that actually is true. It is still a setup. It is not officially confirmed that Kamura Shikimi is Mutasina. But again, Reiki is not known for his subtlety. So that's as confirmed as it gets for now. I'd now love to dwell in the conflict between her group and Kirito's group much longer than it occurred. And I'm pretty sure we are going to. Like, her group was not even her own. I'm quite certain we will see more of the what was it? Virtual Research Society, they call themselves. But seriously, enough with the Yuchio. He's dead, he's not coming back. If he comes back, it's gonna be an asspool, so it's not gonna be good. Let his legacy rest, please. Also, I wanted implication of the tech occurring from VR, like using STL in ethical way in treating people. I think it'll get there eventually, but Medicuboid is working just fine, and STL, it's literally a prototype that is owned by Wrath. Not enough time has passed since Alicization to make progress on that one. Whereas for Medicuboid, we literally had these 2-3 years, maybe even 3.5. I don't have the exact timeline on my mind, but 3.5 since the release of SAO to actually work on it. And Nerve Gear itself predates SAO too. So again, let some time pass on that front. And let's be real, STL is becoming Neurolinker anyways. I'm gonna have to rewatch your Sonic Frontiers. That has absolutely nothing to do with feedback on Unital Ring. I love the one where Yu-Gi-Oh lives and becomes an Integrity Knight. This also has absolutely nothing to do with Unital Ring. That has more to do with the cake timeline of Sword Art Online. Let's see. There we go. Polski, well done. I know you're in the chat. Hope SAO Arc, Moon Cradle, and Unital Ring come to anime in next year. I got bad news for you. I have no idea who this Char Aznable is. So, chat, if you know, do let me know. Not particularly interested. The way author changed the story from Unital Ring and the next chapter it go to Underworld, it feels like I'm getting cliffhanger every chapter and it annoys me. Thank you! Thank you, Louis. That is such a great point that I have in my personal notes as well. But especially Unital Ring 6 feels like it is written with the anime adaptation in mind, because every chapter ends with its own cliffhanger in the book and switches to the other perspective. So we get a cliffhanger in Underworld, and the next chapter, when you're wondering about what's gonna happen now, boom, you're back in Unital Ring. You're not getting a conclusion for that. Unital Ring progresses, you get a cliffhanger, oh, what's gonna happen next? You flip the page, Underworld. Can we just stay in one place, please? But yeah, it's pretty clear the book, the arc in general as well, but especially Unital Ring 6 feels very much designed around a potential anime adaptation, with specifically a chapter being planned as an episode with a clear start, clear middle, and clear not ending, a cliffhanger. And that really gets annoying, especially when you're trying to read a book in a continuous way. I don't think that really works in written format. Alicization, especially War of Underworld, had similar moments as well. But there, it felt like the chaos of War of Underworld itself was actually helping achieve that chaotic nature of war. You were constantly flipping between the battle scenes and the chapters themselves. They were not episode long, but rather 10-15 page chapters. And then you were flipping the point of view. So there wasn't a lot of a disconnect between the continuous narrative. Here, it feels like an entire episode long thing is happening, and then you switch over with a cliffhanger, and that can get quite annoying for me. I agree with that one. Char Aznable is Darth Vader of Mobile Suit Gundam. That is as great of an explanation as going to get. That's a good example giving, I should say. Kirito got the portable version of SDL, right? Yes, correct. In Unital Ring 6, Kikoka gave him the P SDL, and P, as you know from PlayStation from PSP, it stands for portable. Unlike PlayStation, the portable is at the beginning though. I really liked my PlayStation Portable. It's still at my home in Turkey, but I can't find the charger, and all the UMD discs have actually broken and split apart, the encasing and all that kind of stuff. I wonder why Yu-Gi-Oh has a mask on his face. Well, first reason is that he's not Yu-Gi-Oh, and the second reason is that he's supposedly sensitive to Solus's light. But for those of you who have read the Progressive series, I believe that was Progressive 3, Floor 4, Barcarole of Froth. Viscount Eophilus never came out of his room because supposedly his skin was very sensitive to the sun. Turns out he was just scared. So it was personal issues. So the main reason Eolyne has a mask is because, well, he has to look ever so slightly different from Yu-Gi-Oh. Where are you, Eolyne? There you are. Actually, no other reason. Perhaps I'll order the light novel. I never read light novels. Here's a PSA, you all should read light novels. Links are in the description. Do check them out, and you'll be supporting the channel as well as you do. When is the manga of Unital Ring coming? The manga of Unital Ring is actually coming. I believe the first volume was published as a tankobon collection, and it is still continuing in, I believe it was Dengeki Daio magazine, I want to say. Could be Dengeki Mao as well. I always mix those two. I don't know which one is which, one of which is cancelled. So whichever one is left, that should be where Unital Ring airs monthly. As for Yen Press, they are actually quite a bit on a roll lately. I believe Sketch of Deep Night Volume 3 is coming out in January. And they have licensed Ari Aincrad as well, which Ari Aincrad itself is a bit of a letdown. It's copying the anime. But still, since they caught up with a lot of the SAO projects, they can be a lot more liberal with their licensing right now. So Unital Ring is probably, for the West, is not very off. Yuki was understandable, but they overused Yu-Gi-Oh during Gabriel fight. I don't particularly agree, no. They don't make an anime with Unital Ring, I'm just gonna jump all over my room. I don't think that's gonna affect their decision making though. Doesn't Reiki also help with writing the anime script? Reiki has a supervision role with all the SAO multimedia products. How much he actually uses his supervision power, that remains to be seen. He's a very likable and sympathetic person who generally agrees with things, and the reality of the industry is that if you don't agree with things, you don't get much say anyways. There are a lot of harsh truths when it comes to having your IP licensed for other projects. Hey Shadow, welcome. No, mate, stop with the Yu-Gi-Oh! I had enough of it. There are no more memories in the Blue Rose Sword about Yu-Gi-Oh! It's all been snuffed out as explicitly stated by Kirito after the Gabriel fight. Please, there's nothing in this world left of Yu-Gi-Oh! Done. Over. And if he comes back, it's gonna be an ass pull, and we're gonna criticize Reki for it. Because that hurts the legacy of Yu-Gi-Oh! And what his entire story stood for. You don't need to... What's the right word without being too blunt? Nah, not gonna go there. He should have come back, just respect his legacy, we're done. Okay, finally, can continue. The aspects of game whose take on the other game, SAO appearance style, Ayla, and even okay, that's. I'm sorry, the English is confusing me now. Oh, I think they mean how all of these different games come together in a single sandbox. Yeah, that is actually quite the hype moment, but comes with a lot of drawbacks as well that Reki is often trying to sidestep. I feel like that's one of the main reasons why we don't have... Oh my god, this is actually still very much hot. The fact that I don't have a cup with the handle. Not great. I think that is the main reason why we don't have a lot of confrontations between different games, because they function too differently and Reki is not exactly sure how to balance things out. Like if the ALO players come across GGO players, what's going to happen? You know? I think Reki still hasn't figured it out. So the people who have come across each other so far, they very much go by limited magic and mainly QCQ combat, close quarters combat movements. And I think that's the reason for it. So again, double-edged sword. Hey, Polsky, your time is up. Oh, not up, here. It's more SAO and I like more SAO, don't we all? Can't exactly say why, but I really enjoy it more than other anime or books. Like once you relate to a series or have a connection. I like the progress of technology and incarnation in Underworld. Like more people being able to fly makes sense to my understanding. Again, double-edged sword. What incarnation is becoming is, well, became in War of Underworld, is already quite troublesome. And I feel like if you guys watched The Last Airbender, the Avatar series, and then watched Korra, I find it quite similar to that. Like the main concept goes, hey, we have these things, concepts like incarnation or bending in the two respective series, and a certain time has passed. So we need to have a progression of some sorts from that baseline we established, which is very much an understandable idea. However, there comes a point where it's less about the usage evolving and the skills becoming less special. And for things to be special, the power just escalates to stupid levels. Like, you know, that's how you get from, I don't know, just bending the elements in The Last Airbender and then having, I don't know, laser spouting Korra against the Dark Avatar doing stuff that nobody even understands, because there has to be a progress, and the more you power creep, the more absurd you have to go. And that's the situation with Incarnation as well. The more the progress of 200 years and more people being a little bit more in tune with Incarnation, understandable. However, the shit that's happening with Incarnation is becoming so stupid in comparison that I just wish it didn't exist. Yeah, the Masaru scene was really nice chase, although that was cut in between by those episode breaks as well. Like that UR is a survival game, something I'm much more familiar with than MMOs. The way it's designed, it's really nice. It's like, you know, all these different skill trees and proficiencies. It's great, but I feel like right from the get-go, a lot of these proficiencies are absolutely meaningless. Like, Shinon comes across the pattern, if I remember correctly. Were they the rat people? I think they're the rat people. Or the bird people, could be the bird. No, she first came across the bird people, and then the pattern came across with Shilika and stuff. Doesn't matter. The language skill proficiency. It's vital because the NPCs that fill this world speak a filtered language, a completely different language that humans cannot understand. However, if you increase your language proficiency, you slowly start understanding what they're saying, and they in return start understanding what you're saying to them. It's a really great concept. I like the first time it was brought up, I'm like, this is actually a fucking great mechanic. Yes, more please. But then I realized Shinon obtained the first language proficiency by trying to communicate with them, and with just level 1 she could basically understand 90% of their language, and I'm like, what the fuck? What else is there to learn beyond level 1 is the question, when you can understand that much by having just one proficiency level. And then Reki is trying to show, you know, you still need to practice to increase your proficiency level. So Shinon randomly tries to say fork in the language of the NPCs, and once she repeats it 3 times correctly, another language tier is achieved. But man, you already could understand 90% of what they were saying perfectly fine. Does it really matter whether you pronounce their word for a fork correctly or not? I feel like the general ideas are great, but the progress of them are so abridged that they barely make any difference. One way to salvage it, in my opinion, which you may actually get, considering the circumstances, is that some NPCs could be easier to communicate with. They require less language proficiency, whereas NPCs on higher levels of the game world will require higher levels of language proficiency to be able to communicate. That would be a reasonable way to salvage the ease of language proficiency earning. However, similar things exist in other skill trees as well, so how to put this? If I try to put it a certain way, it's gonna take too long. It feels like there are these great ideas that Reki is putting into the novels. However, there is not enough space to flesh them out properly, so the progression of them feel too abridged. And as a result, it feels like the mechanic itself is kind of meaningless. Especially when you have Yui who can just bypass that language barrier anyways. Again, one of those, at the very beginning I mentioned a lot of these solutions coming from AS pools. Yui language skill is one of them. Again, AS pool in this context doesn't mean they don't make sense. They do make sense. However, if I know every single problem is going to be solved by an AS pool that I didn't expect, then I am not going to trust in the tension you are trying to create in any situation, because you're writing a situation to be solved. You're not writing a situation and then watch the characters solve it. I think that's a huge distinction to make. I don't really like the mystery around Eolyne. Either confirm that he's Yu-Gi-Oh or let him be his own character. I mean, to be frank, Eolyne and Kirito scenes, they are among the most memorable in the entire book. Their dynamic is just as good as it was with Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh, which is kind of the point. But the mystery, it's basically Reki corner, getting himself caught in a corner. There is no right answer. If he's not Yu-Gi-Oh, and he shouldn't be Yu-Gi-Oh based on the knowledge we have of Underworld, then Yu-Gi-Oh fans are going to feel baited this entire time for no reason whatsoever. If he turns up being Yu-Gi-Oh, everyone's gonna be like, well, why the fuck did you kill him beforehand? Why is he back? Why is everyone back? Like, we're already halfway through that problem with the returning characters already. But like, that defeats the entire purpose of not just Human Realm, but also War of Underworld sub-arc. So either solution, that's just disappointment for fans, and I think it was a terrible idea to bring Eolyne back. And I feel like it would have, I'm just gonna go back there, the Moon Cradle, instead of being Ronya main character, we should have had Tise as the main character and dealt with the Yu-Gi-Oh blues, with Tise and Kirito actually discussing about Yu-Gi-Oh and, you know, trying to move past him and all that kind of stuff. That would have been so much better than what we got in Moon Cradle, at least in volume 19, the way Ronya was written. Exactly, I agree, Polsky. The fact that almost every volume ends on a cliffhanger, I mean, we talked about it, but like, literally every chapter ends with a cliffhanger. It's too much. I'm fine with cliffhanger endings at the end of books. I just have a problem with them if 3 back-to-back cliffhangers is literally the exact same cliffhanger because the plot hasn't progressed. Which was the case with Unital Ring. Art Online Unital Ring Yu-Gi-Oh? No. Thank you, Sandra Nuvoloni, for explaining that. But you should not have that shred of hope. I'll put it that way. Lifa. Yes. This shit is milked as fuck. What the fuck is even happening? I mean, that is generally the question you would ask when you have no idea what is happening. But if you have no idea what is happening, then you can't exactly make this statement, can you? Because you don't know what is happening and you don't know if it's milking or not. If anything is being milked, that's gonna be on the franchising side, not the main series light novel side. But that brings us to the end of the YouTube comments, actually, so I can switch over to the responses on Twitter. Okay, 1.5 hours with me going on tangents quite often. How are things going? I'd be satisfied if they showed more of how Eolyne is different from Yu-Gi-Oh and separating the two characters. I mean, we literally saw his Stacia window. A completely different ID. I just can't stand the exact same mystery coming up back to back to back to back. Like, we had 2 volumes of Kirito constantly looking at him and crying. And then Alice came in, she's wondering about Yu-Gi-Oh! And then Selka comes back, and Tiza comes back, Ronya comes back. They're all looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! Eolyne like, too much. Like, I'll put it this way: if I was Eolyne, that there comes a point where you have to go, alright, fellow people, I really don't want to be rude because I have this very kind persona for some reason, but it really seems like some of you have a problem with my existence, so out with it. What the fuck is going on with me? Either Kirito, Tize, or Eolyne should confront the other part of the argument and just settle it properly. It should not have taken this long. At this point, I expect Eolyne as the secret love child from Underworld of Kirito and Asuna. Personally, it's probably a stretch, but I can see him being a failed experiment of Kirito trying to recreate Yu-Gi-Oh! Based on his own memories. Think of it like Professor Shigemura trying to revive Yuna by using hundreds, thousands of SAO survivors of what they remember or know of Yuna to create the white Yuna. Kirito may have tried something similar as the Star King. And, you know, maybe use Tize and Ronie, Lina, Golgoroso, a lot of people who knew Yu-Gi-Oh! So, if Eolyne has to have a connection to Yu-Gi-Oh! That's the only realistic way I can see it going. They created a personality that is practically Yu-Gi-Oh! However, he has no memories because it's not Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, so I asked the same question on Twitter. Top response, Mao. Alright, this is his own thing. I think he wrote it a while back, actually. Or maybe I'm mixing it with his progressive movie review, if I remember correctly. I don't know. The worst part about Unital Ring is the return of incarnation. I wholeheartedly agree. Hey Bobby, how you doing? 37 months, that is very long. Welcome, how you doing? By the way, you can become a channel member and support the channel. You're gonna have that nice little badge that evolves over the months, and you'll be able to use emotes as well. So keep that in mind. Or, you know, super chats are also fine. Super chats are also fine. Also, we have channel merch, the first day and more. Link in the description. And you can also get light novels from the Amazon affiliate links. My speech is already tired. But, you know, support the channel however you can. Helps. Hitting that like button counts. It counts a lot. Don't forget. But yeah, I agree. The return of incarnation is by far the worst thing. Because, you know, War of Underworld happened and we're through. It's fine. Can't go anywhere else. But the same problem I mentioned with the Last Airbender and Korra. Now we return to Underworld, 200 years has passed, things must have evolved, and everything is more bonkers, which is fine. Evolution is fine. But the problem with everything being more bonkers is that what already was extremely bonkers is now a very stupid thing that can pretty much do anything. Which I'll get to in my own opinions once we get to it. Hopefully I will be able to. After the shit show of Volume 15 Plus, a lot of people may disagree, but I too would define most of the War of Underworld incarnation to be a shit show as well. I hoped we were done with it, but then it returns in the even worst possible way, where Kirito's incarnation sucks until the story will need it so it can defeat the antagonist. That is actually a great point, where Kirito constantly goes, yo, I'm not the Star King, I don't have my memories anymore, I'm not that person, I can't do this and that. However, when something happens, he can do it. He can do it just fine. No problem. Incarnation. I can do it. If he can do it, fine. But don't try to create some artificial tension by claiming he can't do it for multiple books. You know? If he's just gonna be able to do it with the snap of a finger, then don't build it up as something he can't do. Simple as that. And the stuff you already talked about on the wiki server about all the retcons Reki does with it, just so he could have some edge of the seat moments. Okay, this is definitely written after mine, so this is original creation, just to respond to me. Thanks, Mao. But some other stuff that has been a bother is the game Unital Ring. Started out interesting, yep. But then it just lost the game feel. Skill proficiency being all over the place with people talking a new language after learning 3.5 words. Exactly what I just mentioned. Completely Deus Ex Machina effects the Lockhouse gives. Oh, that's an entirely different topic that is further elaborated in the last book as well, earlier portions of it. Yes, the stupid amount of bonuses people get just by the Lockhouse existing, which don't even feel connected, not to mention it's surviving a 10-kilometer fall in the first place. Yup. All agreed. Sword skills making a return, except we keep using the same 5 all over again. I don't know, I'm thinking about it and I'm like, it's just, I can let that one slide, because when I think about it, when I play an MMORPG, how many different skills do I use? I really am not going to use more than, I don't know, 5 or 6 battle skills maybe. I'm not gonna use more than what I can reach reliably with a single hand without looking at my keyboard. So I feel like using the same skills kinda has some merit. But it's also probably because Reki does not want to use too many sword skills, because that's just gonna be troublesome for the anime to portray. Not that the anime cares about consistency when it comes to sword skills, but still. He also has to use them at proper points, because he always previously made a big deal about how precise the sword skills are and how Kirito plans ahead his movements, like against Volo. He specifically uses vertical square because he knows that the first hit is going to slow the incoming sword down. The second hit is going to come back up and slow it even more. Then he's gonna turn around and slam it again, and the third one is going to go to that sword lock. And once he bounces away, the fourth hit is finally going to connect. So when Reki actually uses more complicated sword skills, they always serve a purpose of that kind. Very specific to the event that's transpiring. So I feel like that could be an effect of that as well. Reki does not want to use so many different sword skills without a given reason, which in return sometimes creates more issues, because suddenly there comes a sword skill that you never heard of that is extremely helpful. For example, for anime audiences, that could be the spinning shield sword skill when Kirito blocked the Dussolbert's Phoenix. It was first introduced in a Lisbeth side story, actually, which Kirito used to block the ice breath of Zirfan. But hey, who would have known that a sword skill tree actually had a magical spinning shield that you create with your sword? Comes out of nowhere just for that specific instance, you know? So things like that is probably why Reki is sticking to a core set of sword skills and only straying out of it when there's an actual need for it, which I think is the better kind of ass pull. than actual ASPOOls of the series. Comes out of nowhere, but come on, it makes sense. I'll just look at the chat. Maybe there'll be a way to force Kirito to fight without incarnation now that there's someone with incarnation disabling weapon in Underworld. Again, incarnation disabling stuff was all... It's an ASPOOL to prevent an ASPOOL. So when you're 2 layers into an ASPOOL, how can you rationalize that there won't be a 3rd tier of ASPOOL, you know? Oh, you're using incarnation disabling incarnation. How about I use incarnation to disable your incarnation disabling incarnation? And see where I'm getting? It's already an extreme problem mechanic, and using that mechanic to disable it, it creates more problems than it solves. And it's really not going to a nice place. Now I'm worried about how overpowered Star King will be, mostly the incarnation. You think that, and in return I will say, well, if Star King is that proficient with incarnation, if he is going to be that overpowered, why couldn't he kill the Abyssal Horror? Just use your incarnation, plop the individual pieces, done. Easy. That's why none of the incarnation power creep actually keeps up. It actually does not keep up ever since we fought Quinella. We know Quinella was very powerful and all that kind of stuff, but we never got an explicit reference of how powerful Quinella was. And due to the narrative going, we just had to keep scaling up, scaling up, scaling up, scaling up. Quinella feels like an ant. Like, when did she even use incarnation? You know? Things like that. Incarnation is just one big ball of trouble that nobody should touch. And we should just throw that out the window. I always assume there are like at least 20 or even more sword skills we just haven't heard of. Could be. That's just a personal assumption. Power Scaler is gonna love Star King then. Probably not. Probably they're gonna be disappointed. Because it's not gonna be consistent with anything. Although they don't really care about consistency or making sense or not. They just take the highest feat and try to multiply it by 10. So that their reviewers remain in the dark and accept their changes. Most of them are very good at twisting the words to their agenda. I'm not going to talk about power scalers. I think People of Wrath should have done something with the main visualizer to reduce incarnation stuff, I guess. I don't think they can, because that's literally their processor. Due to the way they handle the data, if they do anything with the main visualizer, the people inside Underworld, the people living in there as light cube clusters, they won't be able to do anything. Because they don't interact with the code base. They directly interact with the main visualizer using the memory data. I think Yampress went with mnemonic data, but if we're being technical, I think that was the wrong term. I remember discussing with Gishimenas. I may be mixing the term itself, but yeah, that's tangent. Incarnation in Accel World is very interesting and their stake to not use, but it's kinda become bullshit in recent volume. I mean, Accel World has been dealing with incarnation since volume 1, so incarnation existed way longer there than it has in the SAO series. I can't believe there are only 4 dual blade sword skills, but that's closer to headcanon. Are there only 4 dual blade sword skills? There has to be more. Ah, 4 unique ones indeed. Cross block, which was used against Gleamize, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure if it ever was used in Alicization. Double circular. When was this used? Was this ever used in the anime? Volume 1, Chapter 13 and Volume 6, Chapter 14. I'm gonna assume this was never used in the anime. Double circular. But then, as dual blades, you also have access to one-handed sword skills anyways. Okay, back here. That's enough time with chat. I ran out of my tea anyways. Okay, where was I here? Yep, the log cabin falling down, sword skills making a return. Magic being shit as usual, because God forbid magician is stronger than a swordsman in this series. Ah, that is actually a great point. I never think about it because I want to come from the side that, hey, this is Sword Art Online and maybe sword combat and the combat style of our heroes should be in the forefront, but that is actually true, Mao. Magic is borderline useless until it becomes borderline OP. There's literally no balance. That's partially because of Kirito's skill and the way he interacts with things. So it's either things he can beat or things he cannot beat. But again, the result is the same. It's either magic is useless or magic is too powerful to be real. Bath scenes, completely agree. They, for some reason, became a staple in progressives. And I really hate the fact that it's coming over to Unital Ring as well. I think we had enough baths. They have become completely tasteless in things that they do, and they don't add anything to the narrative. They don't add anything to the story. It's just there so Abeshi can have an illustration with boobs out that is Twitch acceptable levels. No. And the lack of Mito. We're actually still curious whether Mito will ever be included in the main canon or not. Reiki said if he were to introduce Mito, it would have to be an entirely different character because of the backstories and how it clashes with everything and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, Yuna exists now in the series. And Mito is actually a great character that I truly enjoy. I think she is written much, much better than a lot of the side characters of SAO in the light novels to begin with. I would love to have her in the series, but at least not retcon too much. But yeah, we're still curious whether she will be introduced or not. Favorite aspect, Sophia. Getting to see all different members of the core cast getting their time to shine, especially Shilika and Yui. Yup, plenty of mentions of this so far. That's what happens when I speak for 2 hours straight in an energetic voice. Least favorite aspect, how long this Underworld plotline has been dragged out, especially with Eolyne. Isn't that the common sentiment? I stopped reading Unital Ring after volume 25, so I don't have any strong opinion for this arc so far. To give you guys an idea, if you haven't read, volume 21 is where Unital Ring begins, and then 23, 24, and 25, that's 3 volumes. And they didn't read 2 volumes, 26 and 27, and 27 is where things start heating up. The rest of it is generally establishing the world, you know, slice of life, and all that kind of stuff. So it really makes sense they don't have a strong opinion. And to be frank, I would consider not having a strong opinion as a sign of, I don't want to say disinterest, but not being hooked enough, let's say. But this arc reminds me the White Legion arc from Accel World, with Reki dragging the story and keep adding new subplot every volume. If Emil was here, he'd definitely say something. But yeah, Accel World has been known for this for quite some time, and it's really sad that it's creeping into SAO as well. This is happening in Unital Ring as well as Progressive, by the way. The Floor 7 is really not well received by a lot of people due to a lot of out-of-character moments that needlessly bloated the Floor 7 story. That book really does not, that floor does not need to be 2 volumes long. It's standing right there. I am not even gonna bother grab it. I haven't read it yet, but one thing I saw, by the way, is since switching to Twitter is... Okay, I will need to make this slightly smaller maybe, just so it doesn't... There we go. More like it. I'm gonna make myself larger. I am very big. There we go. I'm not sure if Reki is having fun with the bath scenes. I feel like they're just there for an illustration piece, a book. Because it sells to some people, I guess. Even if it doesn't sell, the way it gets shared and gets things talked about, I think it's more of a marketing strategy rather than specifically marketing the book. Do we know when Demon's Crest is gonna come out in English? I don't think Yam Press licensed Demon's Crest yet. So I'd say no information at the moment. I haven't read it yet, but one thing I saw is that the volumes have few pages, many with less than 300 weight. Oh yeah, this was one of the more interesting responses that I had. Actually going by the page count, the Japanese page counts, of course. The Japanese books are much smaller. If I can show you an example, at least the page size, because it's a side story, it's thin anyway. But hey, that's my progressive Japanese. Oh my god, Japanese edition. Story of a Starless Night. Okay, let's put you there. This is Memorable Song. So this is an English book from Yam Press. And this is the size in comparison that Japanese light novels are. As a result, when you try to sneak in this much content into this size, it is a whole lot thicker. As I said, this is a side story, so it's not thick at all. But when you cram this here, it probably goes like this. So the page count in Japanese is just much higher in comparison. That they looked at the page counts and they think... I put this backwards. And they're saying that the stories are interestingly short, so that kind of explains why there's no progression. I don't completely agree with it. In fact, let me just open the replies as well. I didn't completely agree with it. Because, as I said, first off, Reki works so much better when he actually has some real estate problems, so he can focus on his story. So that's clearly not the case. He's not focusing on anything at all. And secondly, you know, we had plenty of short books back in Alicization as well. Do I here? I actually don't have it here. I brought it back to Turkey, but Alicization Dividing Volume 13 is quite the short book in comparison, yet the story never feels like it has slowed down at all. So that's the main reason why I don't quite agree with it. Oh, background music's gone. Why is the background music gone? Since when it's been gone? You video post, continue watching. Screw you, YouTube. That's literally my background noise. Maybe not the death soundtrack from Integral Factor though. Floor boss. Yeah, let's go with that. And nobody told me I had no background music. But yeah, the main reason I disagree with that is because you can still keep the story flowing, even if the page count is short. The story can move on, but the story is not progressing. So I don't think it has anything to do with the pages. Of course, the part that I agree with, if this book was double-sized, you know, we could get more progression. But the thing is, if we need a book that is double the size, chances are the writing of it will also take double the time. So I think going with that argument, it just opens up way too many variables to come to a reasonable conclusion. I think the music stopped since you boiled the water for the... Jesus, that's been so long. I feel like Unital Ring has the least interesting or threatening antagonists. Oh, this is the one where I completely disagree. Yeah, I do remember this. To be frank, this is a very, very personally dependent opinion. Like, I'm not saying he's wrong or anything, I just completely disagree with the take. I think Gabriel is the most boring villain that we ever had. He's just a psychopath, nothing more. And him being a psychopath gives him his power due to the main visualizer. Like, even Oberon, Sugo Nobuyuki, was more interesting, you know, he was sleazy, he had motivations, whatever. He wasn't doing it because he thought he saw the soul leave a body when they killed their childhood friend, and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Still, my favorite antagonists, that would be Kayaba, arguably not even an antagonist, Quinella, and I want to have one more, but I can't decide between Morte and Mutasina. For now, I'm gonna go with Morte. From Progressive, Laughing Coffin. Mutasina still needs a bit more screen time. To be honest, the jump between Underworld and Unital Ring, I really wish they'd separate the arc. I think this is a very good point to make. The fact that we're constantly switching back and forth, that's also causing a lot of drag in the narratives between the individual things. So maybe if we could have a small sub-arc focusing on one narrative and then focusing on the other narrative, you know, consecutively without going back and forth, I feel like we'd have a much more efficient progression and a much more enjoyable form of narrative in that sense. Of course, it would require a lot of redesigning the entire thing. I'm not saying something as silly as just have the Underworld portions of the series and then have the things and then separate them. No, I'm just saying from a design standpoint, from the before you even started writing the thing, it would have been a much better idea to separate them and go separate ways at separate times, not consecutively. Oh, hey there, man. Yeah, I still can't read your name. Omri Horvat. Is that accurate to what's written in the alphabet that I can't read? Which alphabet is it? Like, I can recognize, despite the fact that I still can't read it, I can at least recognize the Korean alphabet. Oberon had legendary VA. Yeah, true. Zaza, Death Gun, Not my favorite. Not my favorite. Pooh is not... He's not a villain, he's a love interest for Kirito. Wait. Is masked Yu-Gi-Oh? No, he isn't. I said the things I don't like. I really wanted to see them dig more into the building, crafting specifics. Assuming Unital Ring is self-updating like SAO usually did, and Underworld level progression, then I can see someone eventually inventing poorly working machine gun or chemical weapon. I'm actually pretty sure we're gonna get there. It's a survival game. The thing is, that's actually bringing up a great point, and these never showed up in my mentions, so I didn't get to like them. Okay, I'm either liking them or responding to them from what I can see. I had a game plan with all of this, by the way. So yeah, if I don't reply, it seems like I'm just liking, and we're gonna continue that trend here. I tried to respond as much as possible back when I first posted, but I have come to learn that Twitter does not show me a lot of the things in the mentions, which is a big shame. Not sure why that's caused, whether the person is shadow banned or not. Yeah, I don't like it when that happens. I want to see when someone responds to me. But I feel like we're definitely going to see this at some point, because that is constantly brought up by Shinon as well. She can't find proper bullets or proper things. And she requires a lot of crafting, and I feel like that eventually should become relevant. We don't know what the GGO players are doing. They may have started doing something. We absolutely don't know. Hey Ma, welcome. Thank you. Blame Eolyne? That was actually happening before Eolyne took over as well. Like ever since they shifted the main timeline into the curated version rather than the chronological version, it's been happening since then. And it's really annoying me. My least favorite thing is Kirito becoming an underpants monkey for the entire time, kind of. That is the favorite part for a lot of people, actually. But yeah, I don't have an opinion, you know. Kirito is stupid, so stupid scenes in places where there's no real tension, it's fine. I don't have strong opinions, I'm more indifferent to it. The fact that it's been 6 light novel volumes long and there isn't a single significant and juicy detail about things that eventually leads to inter-intelligence war and sets the condition where Accel World is a possible outcome. True. Like, we expect Unital Ring to be the first half of a huge saga that eventually evolves into the inter-intelligence war, similar to how the Human Realm sub-arc evolved into War of Underworld. However, with the way things are going, Unital Ring itself seems like it's going to be longer than the entire Alicization, so it is disappointing. It is disappointing. That's one of the reasons why it feels so stretched and bloated at times. But the main contributor, I'd say, it's still, you know, the way the plot is being handled rather than this afterthought idea. The nick is Hayuse Ringender in Korean. How do you spell English words in your Korean alphabet? Because in Japanese you have hiragana and katakana to differentiate, but from what I'm seeing, your name is fully in the Korean alphabet. I'm interested. Just personal interest. That has absolutely nothing to do with the stream. I like learning stuff. It's Hebrew. Okay. I really like small fonts that feel like they flow into each other. I think Malaysian and Thai have a similar concept. Like the writings They look really cool. I love them. Bonjour. It's a bit late for a bonjour, isn't it? Favorite character in SAO series? Oh my god, these questions always kill me because every single time I have a different answer because I never think about these, and I don't have that such strong opinions on a single character. I like the overall dynamics, and every character matters. Well, most characters matter. I still have different levels of liking towards different characters, but still. That's a very hard question, and I hate trying to answer that question. I'm sorry. I'll just be completely blunt on that one. What do you think about the Magis? We only have one scene with him so far, but he already gets mentioned since the first volume. Do you think he'll become a major antagonist alongside Mutasina? To be able to answer that, we need to know whether Mutasina's group is ever going to become a major antagonist group or not. Like, again, the story is so bloated that to claim something is going to become a major antagonist, it is hard. It is really hard. Like, Unital Ring 6 ends with Agmarl, Westeroth, the Western Empire's lineage, coming back, and I don't think I have it saved in that folder, but here, like, when you look at this, you'll say, oh yeah, this piece of shit is going to be the big bad of Underworld. But I can't say that because the fact of the matter is Pooh's body is still missing, and I feel like with Kirito right there and all Integrity Knights awoken, well, they are starting to wake up, this guy is just gonna get incinerated within 5 minutes. And then suddenly we're gonna have a completely different villain, you know? It's just... the story is so all-encompassing at this point without a clear person being spearheaded in either of the narratives that it's really hard to say where anything will go. It's part of the frustration about Unital Ring. We don't know where anything is going still after 6 volumes, and that uncertainty is getting that negative feedback mostly. When did Gamerturk first hear of SAO? Very early, back in high school. High school first class, maybe second class. That means it is 11, 12 years maybe? I was browsing 9gag. I always saw people shitting on Sword Art Online and how disappointing it was, how it started great and how it felt rushed to its ending, and then how the next story became so terrible. So I was like, can't be that bad. I'm gonna give this a check myself because it's been coming up on my feed so much that I'm tired of it. I watched it, I loved it. Most internet is an idiot, that much we know. Especially with the anonymity. Even non-idiot, it gives people who are not idiots a chance to act like dummies because it's fun. So don't trust the internet in general. That includes me. If something feels off, always question me. I always say this. But that's what it comes down to. On the internet, question everyone. When Integral Factor stream? I don't know. I don't know. Oh, Abishi's live too? Where? On Boom Boom channel? YouTube? Okay then, going back to these. Favorite. Characters like Shirika get moments to shine. We covered that like 5 times already. So I'm not gonna dive deeper into it. This was one of the main points in the entire stream. You can just roll it back and watch then. Least favorite. Of course I like most. Of course, like most, it's just being too slow, and it's been over a year since the last volume. Accel World 27 is his next book, so it's gonna be 1.5 years, at least until SAO gets continued. Oh, right, 1.5 years From the previous book, yes. Yeah. I think the main problem with Twitter things, replies, is that the character limitation affects how expressive you can be. It's one of the reasons why I stopped sharing my opinions on a lot of things on Twitter. Because, like, when you say it's just being too slow, I know what the person means. And the way it's shortened to it's just being too slow comes off wrong to a person who wouldn't know exactly what the person is meaning. So that's the bad side of Twitter character limitations, and I'm not paying Eolyne to have non-character limitations. But yeah, that's pretty much things we agree on in general. How Unital Ring and Underworld are not separate arcs. Least favorite. Yep, this was brought up previously as well. Completely agree. Favorite. It would have to be Yui wanting to train to use a sword so far. I need to read more. I really enjoy how Yui is actually being handled despite my previous criticisms. I feel like she comes up with a lot of ass pulls in general because of her nature. However, while I do hate the fact that most of those are really cheating ass pulls, it stays true to Yui's character, and I really enjoy the way she's being utilized in these different game contexts. Like when everyone is being strangled, Yui is also being strangled, she's also under the debuff, but because she's just artificial intelligence, she doesn't have to process that pain. Like, even if the pain is recepted by her, unlike a human, she doesn't have the gag reflex when someone is taking your breath away. So even if she feels the pain, she can just completely disregard the pain and continue without the human reflexes preventing her. Those kinds of stuff I really enjoy with Yui. Depends if Morte is still alive. What's your prediction could happen? I have no idea. Like from floor 5, floor 6 to the completion of Aincrad. Such a long time that anything could happen. I really can't answer that question. To be fair, you can always just write in notes and share them in replies. True. Okay, I had to think for a second as to what you were referring to. That is true, that can be done. Some downsides, because I like being able to search by text, by keywords. If I use a picture, that's not gonna probably function. Other than that, yeah. Completely agree, that is a valid solution. I'm still waiting for Abeshi's Yujiko, which won the vote in Reki channel. Is Reki channel still continuing? It's been such a long time. I'm still worried what would happen to Yui if she gets down in Unital Ring. This comes up way too often. It's an assumption, of course. But generally speaking, nothing should happen to Yui if she were to die in Unital Ring. What happens is, when you die in Unital Ring, your account just gets blocked from accessing Unital Ring again. Yui is stored on Kirito's hemisphere. I'm not sure if he ever migrated it to the PC or not. But Yui does not live in Unital Ring. Her life is on hardware in the real world, so if Yui dies in Unital Ring, nothing's gonna happen in the real world to her. There's absolutely no problem on that side. I wish it would focus more on the Underworld. What the heck is going on with Eolyne? I do think Kirito acts less adult than he did in Alicization. Where is volume 28 anyways? That is actually less of a response and more questions. I wish it would focus more on Underworld. I wish it would focus on one thing. That's where I draw the line. That's what's gonna make it better than what it was before. Just less bloat, one narrative. Focus to one narrative. What's going on with Eolyne? Nobody knows. I do think Kirito acts less adult than he did in Alicization. I don't know, in casual scenarios, sure. I mean, when you look at his journeys with Yu-Gi-Oh, he did so many stupid stuff. I don't recall all that much, how much. It was cut from the anime, but even during the Zakaria chapter, I remember Zakaria chapter clearly because it always stands out when you don't have an anime adaptation, and I have to keep other things in mind when you don't have an anime adaptation. Even in the Zakaria chapter, there were so many stupid stuff Kirito was doing constantly. Like, there's a reason why light novel readers refer to him as the dork, because he is actually the dork. That is how he reacts in most casual situations. That's just who he is. Where's volume 28 anyways? Hopefully still being written. My least favorite part of Unital Ring is the overall pacing of the story being slow. Yes, we all agree with that. I feel like Reiki should get straight to the point on any big plot points that he teases for each volume he releases, only to push it back into the next volume, which is frustrating at times. I don't think you should get straight to the point. Like, to such an extreme, I cannot agree. But at some point, we're 6 books in, there has to be like certain clear markings for your narrative that makes it feel like the story is working towards. Whereas Unital Ring feels like something is constantly jumping up in front of you, and we're going to this plot now, we're going to this plot, this plot, this plot, we're constantly going to plots. And I don't think this criticism gets understood correctly by other people as well, because whenever you mention this, you're gonna get just slapped with, duh, the goal is clearly completing Unital Ring and reaching the inner circle. That's playing a game. That's not a narrative goal. Like, what are we doing? That's literally, if Emil would be here, he'd be able to chime in a lot more, but that's more like a series goal. With Accel World, the point is literally reach level 10 of the game, and it's been 27 volumes, 28 coming out soon, or 26 volumes and 27 coming out soon, I don't know. And they're still chasing that series goal. And that's a completely different thing than actually having objectives, clear objectives that you are working towards. And I think that criticism is just rarely understood by the people who feel emotionally hurt when you criticize Reiki's known problems for some reason. Certain criticisms Reiki himself knows. He literally talks about them in his afterwords. He knows he likes to write stuff. He knows he usually goes overboard with what he writes. Like, we're not being mean-spirited when we're criticizing something. I'm not being... I'm not going, Sword Art Online should die when I criticize, oh, Unital Ring, it's really going slow, man. Like, we need a little bit more focus. I don't know. Just really don't like the internet age all that much anymore. One of the reasons why I don't share my opinions publicly and just speak about it in the Wikia server. Anyways, what was that? For me, the least favorite is, despite being over a handful of volumes in there, barely been any explanation for what's going on. Makes me wonder if Reiki will end up rushing the story at some point. That is actually a valid concern, because if the numbers go down with people getting bored in a sense, oversimplifying of what bored means in this case, if people start losing their interest for one reason or another, you will need to artificially speed things up, and then it's just gonna throw the balance of the entire storytelling as well. So I really hope it doesn't come to that. But it is a valid concern. I laughed when my friend said Kirito acts like an ex-boyfriend with Eolyne. Take care, Dryalga. Take care. I love the Unital Ring and Underworld moments. They are great. The side characters are great, but I hate how they're not given enough time to prosper. We already have Underworld developed last work. We should have gone to Underworld later and build up the world of Unital Ring. There's more aspects to building up a world. I think it is fine the way Unital Ring is being built up. We're literally coming into this world from the perspectives of our characters, and I think that's fine. Nothing wrong with it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with developing Underworld further as well. Like, the problem is always the bloat. The amount of trivial information that we're receiving, the amount of C plots, D plots, and these very minor and inconsequential things taking a lot of the spotlight. It's the context of what's in there rather than whether it's there or not. It is there, and I think it's fine that it is there, but the context of it sometimes feels horribly, horribly wrong. That leads to it feeling really bloated. I liked Alicization because it was the first arc where Kirito formed a meaningful relation with someone who did not have XX chromosome or was a robot. Actually, Kirito did have a meaningful relationship before starting Sword Art Online with a male person. They got along in the beta in Sword Art Online quite well, but Kirito kinda let him be beaten up by bullies and never spoke to him again. What'll happen once they clear Unital Ring, like how it's gonna affect the real life world? Those are questions. Like, are the previous games gonna be functional again? Because right now they are not functional. Whoever tries to log in, well, account creations have, if I remember correctly, have been completely shut down. And people who have side accounts, they can log in and they will be immediately converted into Unital Ring instead. Like, the question is whether those games are gonna come back once Unital Ring is cleared. Another question, will Unital Ring be cleared? I am mentioning it because we have to go into Interintelligence War at some point. So clearing Unital Ring can just be a huge red herring, a goal that we never intended to reach in the first place. I just want you to think about that potential. I'll put it that way. I hope Unital Ring has a connection with that typical illustration of Accel World with the fluctuating light, not necessarily Alice, we don't know yet, and Kirito fighting with the huge dark figure. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. The survival game aspect is kinda getting left aside. True, to a certain extent. The problem is, the survival game aspect was never the most interesting part. Like, how many times do you need to see a character go, oh my god, my thirst points are going down, I need to go drink. They drink. It's fine. I don't need a survival aspect constantly being mashed at my head, in my opinion. The thing is, what I mentioned earlier, I feel like the mechanics and gimmicks of the world are mentioned, however, they are so inconsequential that you don't even know why they exist, because after one level, they are so overpowered already and can pretty much do everything you can imagine. I feel like that disconnect between what's interesting to read as the reader is clashing with how deep we have to go on the specific individual mechanics. And I think a good rule of thumb is what I mentioned back during the engineering bits about the Underworld side. I don't necessarily need to know every single detail. It's fine. I get it. So, I don't need every single thing being expanded upon so much, in my opinion. Mutasina is meh. Disagreed. Underworld and Uniting Bits fight for relevancy. Yeah, very common complaint at this point. The stakes, I really believe the whole amnesia thing from OS would have worked better here. I am not sure how it would have worked though. Not related, just memory loss unless the game is cleared. That's probably an argument that overstays its welcome for a character limited Twitter reply. Yep, hey there Cody, welcome. No new accounts, no. But the thing is, it's mentioned in Unital Ring 6. Most people who had sub-accounts, like Asuna had 2 Alo accounts if you remember, most people are using their sub-accounts in other games to dive in and act as spies, basically, trying to see what the other game population is doing in comparison to their game population originally. That's the most you can do. No new account creations. I think those details add depth, but sometimes just... Yeah, exactly. It's a balance you can find, and at that point you can only make mistakes because there is no perfect balance. Everyone has their different opinions. You will have to gauge feedback and then try to find something that makes the least amount of people unhappy. I think that's the best way to put it. Because someone's gonna be unhappy anyways. Favorite, more story focus on other characters besides Asuna and Kirito. Yeah, covered that quite a lot. I also like that Underworld is back and there's some interesting parts. I think Underworld right now has more interesting parts than the Unital Ring has. Least favorite, the story in general. Unital Ring is boring to me and I have currently zero interest in hearing about the game. We hear this so much, and I always tie it to the fact that we don't have proper goalposts in Unital Ring. It's what I said when I did my Fatal Bullet review as well. Play the game is not a story. It can give you nice skits, it can give you nice adventures perhaps. Like Caliber. Caliber is a really nice story, but Caliber is 1/3 of this book. So I think that's the main disconnect that's happening here. The fact that we don't have clear goalposts. Favorite, Caveman Kirito. Least favorite, not enough Caveman Kirito. The idea of Kirito will probably fight Star King. I'm actually curious whether they mentioned this as a positive or not, because I said please mention your favorite or least favorite aspects of Unital Ring. And to be frank, this is one of my least favorite aspects. Release schedule. To be frank, the release schedule was nothing out of the ordinary. The only exception is this year, because Reiki had 2 Demon's Crest volumes beforehand. And now has to catch up on Accel World as well. The release schedule is not all that bad. Not even all that out of the ordinary. I enjoy the concept very much, dislike the execution. Starting to feel like Accel World, where there's massive periods that don't really contribute to anything major to the story. This comes up way too often, especially for the people who read Accel World. Which is one of the reasons why there's a huge tension between the people who really enjoy Unital Ring and the people who really don't enjoy Unital Ring. Like, I got attacked quite often by fans in the past As I always say, fanboys are just as bad as haters, but like the criticisms, these criticisms about Reki, he knows, he talks about them himself. We know from his time with Accel World for ages, for decades. Well, decades is a bit much, maybe over a decade, let's say. And these people are coming, oh, are you criticizing something I want to enjoy? You're the worst person ever. I'm just going on a different tangent, I believe, at this point. Like, I don't want to complain about people who complain about my complaints. But, you know, there are things we know that's been out there for 1.5 decades at this point. And it does really get annoying to deal with those people. Yeah. Cute. Okay. Final bit, quote tweets, and then I'm gonna switch to the Wikia chat. Okay. How do I see quote tweets again? What the fuck? I was supposed to be able to click at the number of quote tweets, no? Post engagements? Oh, they put it here, okay. Okay, we'll start with Toka because it's short and I know its context elsewhere. The writing is my most hated aspect of it. Reki looking for another character we didn't ask for. Toka's spear is sharp, but he is correct on this front. The general attitude is, I'm pretty sure I mentioned earlier in the stream as well, why create replacement for characters and why kill off characters? Why move on 200 years if you're going to bring everything back from that era? Like that's genuinely a huge complaint. And understandable one. It's also my complaint, which is why it's very understandable for me. But yeah, like it is true. Yes, I really like Fanatio, I really like Renly, I really like Tize, I really like whatever as a character. But do they really need to come back after 200 years? Really? Is that what we're gonna do? Okay, then we'll start with Taruth. The mystery and world building is arguably the best we've seen in the series so far, the harem baiting is completely gone, and seeing all the characters, even minor ones, get a chance to have a little spotlight has been great, on top of a huge curiosity focus has been great for me. I mean, harem baiting gone? Yes. The bath scenes creeping in, it's not harem bait, so I agree. Can't contest that one. The mystery and world building is arguably... The world building, I agree. The mystery feels a bit too much on the extreme side. Especially in regards to the mystery about the plot. As we mentioned earlier, we don't know where anything is going. For reference, it's been 6 volumes and we still know nothing. Back in Alicization, it was Alicization turning, so that's beginning, running, turning. In the 3rd volume, we pretty much had our huge info dump about Quinella and the Integrity Knights, actually giving us clear answers, 3 volumes in. And we, ever since the first book, we had our plot completely written in front of us. Kirito was like, Yuju seems to know what he's doing, so I'm gonna use him to get to the Axiom Church, the middle thing, and access the admin console. I'm gonna talk with outside and figure out what the fuck is going on. It's a very clear path with clear objectives. Cut the tree down, get to Zakaria, join the garrison, get a commendation, join the Swordcraft Academy. Well, things go wrong and they get arrested, but the fact of the matter is their goal was to graduate as top students, join the 4 Empires Unification Tournament, become Integrity Knights, and speak to the person up top. Like, the entire thing, while it was filled with mysteries, We had a path to follow that we know we were following. And the twist that happens, that just spices it up even more, and that's a good twist as well, if you ask me. Again, it's the fact that having a path and not having a path, and I feel like not having a path is the thing that hurts the Unital Ring side of the story the most. Oh god, I forgot to check in with the chat. I'm losing my voice, by the way. I usually don't speak this much. This is like my speaking quota for 2 weeks straight. I don't like being social. Yeah, the reason I'm not answering the people coming back in the chat is because Tarut continues, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna touch upon it. Narrative choices, however, namely with regards to the ethics of life freezing, oh, here it is, and especially Kirtan Asuna's complacency in it, despite everything we know about them and their respect of life itself, whether virtual or real, really rubs me the wrong way alongside Ricky being unable to let his characters die and move on, when they should have all lived their lives and passed away surrounded by their families during Kirtan Asuna's time in Underworld. And this is exactly it. Like I talked about how it undermines from a narrative perspective, how you create characters to replace characters and then bring back the old characters to replace the replacements. And this is the actual in-story part of it that Tarut actually touches upon. Because what happens is, if you read Moon Cradle and all that kind of stuff, there's constant talks about the unethical nature of the life freezing art and then the deep freeze art afterwards. That they completely abolish life freezing, by the way, by the time Ronnie and Tease become Integrity Knights. So they're never synthesized, their lives are not frozen, they just join the knighthood and then live their lives. And Ronnie and Tease make such a big deal about never wanting to freeze their lives either. And then, suddenly, we're met with, oh my god, those are deep frozen Tease, Ronnie, and Selka. Selka, we know why. But Ronnie and Tease, you know, after saying such strong words, that's not nice. And then Kirito being behind all of this and freezing every single Integrity Knight, like, with the Integrity Knights, the story tries to explain it. Oh, there's going to come a day where a shitstorm is going to happen, sure. But like, it just goes so far against what has previously been talked about that it just rubs me the wrong way, as Tarut put it. I'm sure their roles in future content will be great. I completely agree. Even the little time we had from Fanatio in Unital Ring 6. I love it, because Fanatio, massive troll, love her. But he should have let them all be gone. It also takes away from Kirito's admonishing of Quinella and her methods, and leaves a sour taste for all the characters involved, on top of detracting from them as well, namely Kirito and Asuna for myself, and especially people like Renly and Ronye's unnamed spouse. Pretty much, like, I have nothing else to say. This is really diving into that aspect of the ethical questions that were raised before and agreed upon. And then we're gonna do the exact opposite anyways, because fuck you. Another thing that's been great, however, is also the very evident tie-ins to Accel World, especially with the introduction of Shikimi and other spoilery tidbits through Unital Ring and later Accel World. I'd love to see if Accel World branches from a potential bad end to Unital Ring's events or a direct sequel. And there's also quite a lot of discussion whether it's going to be a bad end or a direct sequel. I think what needs to happen, that is completely my personal preference, but it needs to be a direct sequel in terms of timeline. But SAO should be fully, conclusively done. Like, Accel World should not be picking up a narrative thread that was left behind by SAO. That's my opinion on it. Because if SAO leaves an open thread for Accel World to pick up, oh, then we're gonna be... I'm gonna be angry about having to read 30 more light novels and still not reach a conclusion, because we all know Reiki won't be able to reach the conclusion. Okay, that was Total Stake. Brandon's was quite simple. No harem bait. Alice has been properly portrayed, unlike her War of Underworld counterpart. Completely agree. The new characters are all interesting. Eolyne, Ishtar, Mutasina. Completely agree. Loving the world building for both Unital Ring and Underworld. We talked about that quite a lot. Everyone getting a chance to shine. Talked about that quite a lot. Accel and Alice's relationship. I'm generally indifferent towards this. I know a lot of people are very thrilled about their little, I don't even want to say rivalry, because it no longer even goes that far as well, which is something I like, because if it goes there, it becomes harem bait. But like Accel and Alice is not among my favorite characters. I'll put it that way. That's one of the reasons why I am indifferent towards the relationship Alice has with Asuna, or vice versa. Yujo Angst, that was fun at the beginning, but after 3 books, I'm just really tired of it. As I said, someone should just ask a question as to why he looks so similar. Now for negative, bringing back dead characters. By that, I'm talking about Ronya, Tiza, and the other knights. It ruins the ending of Alicization for me, and it steals attention from the new characters. Completely agree. Adding more mysteries and not answering others. And yeah, that's pretty much the general complaint about everything Unital Ring. Oh, the Integrity Knights still use the numbering though. Integrity Pilots don't use the numbering, but Integrity Knights, Ronya and Tiza still had their numbers. They just dropped the synthesis because there was no more synthesis ritual. Unital Ring's mission is just to go to the middle, just for gamer, exactly. And well, you are promised answers, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much it. What else do we have? No harem bait, quite a common positive at this point. The friendship of Asuna and Alice. Argo is there, yep. Seems everyone talks about the pacing and how Reiki drags it. I'm starting to fear about Unital Ring. This is one of the reasons why I am shy about criticizing Unital Ring, you know? I don't want to give people the wrong idea. Like, it is bloated, but I'm still enjoying it to a certain extent. I am not bashing the stories or anything. And most people who are criticizing how it drags, like, we all mean the same thing. It's just so many irrelevant details for some reason derailing something that we should be focusing on. And I mean, we're not talking about something that you should fear if you want to read the novels. It's not the story, the arc. It's not bad. It's just random small things here and there. They are way too distracting, and when you have like 20, 30, 40, 50 of these small things every couple pages, it starts distracting you. It becomes taking you away from the story, because you start realizing, hey, why did you tell me this? Why did we have to have this paragraph? Why is this story 6 volumes in and we're not anywhere meaningful? And once you ask that question, well, it's because we have so many meaningless details constantly coming in and taking spotlight, taking us to different directions, that we can't progress in our main direction. We're not saying, well, most of us are not saying the story is bad. You don't need to fear about anything. I mean, I have affiliate links down below, don't I? Even if you look from that perspective, even if you look at me as a YouTuber trying to sell a book, because come on, that Amazon affiliate link, that's the main constant under every single one of my videos. Even if you want to look at me from that perspective without knowing me or my interest, even then, do you think I want people to be hating the series? Even from your worst possible take of me as a person, as a creator, it doesn't add up. That's what I'm trying to say. And oh boy, I know that can be taken quite out of context if people wanted to, but hey, that's the internet. You know, just talking about a potentially worst perspective one can have about me. Either way, before I get myself cancelled, fitting together the main series with ordinal scale and progressive. I mean, there's not much ordinal scale, if I have to be honest. It's just references here and there, which again, references at this point have quite a bad connotation in these later books. Progressive, that is actually becoming a problem, because that's one of the reasons why I feel like Unital Ring has a hard time to move on now, because it has to reference progressive, where we have reached in the latest progressive light novel. However, the fate of the Dark Elves and Kismel are not known from the progressive light novels. So Reiki finds himself in a situation where he either has to continue being very slow on the Unital Ring side of the story, or tiptoe around Kismel, which is exactly what he has been doing about Eolyne and Yu-Gi-Oh topic for 3.5 volumes. It gets people really tired when you tiptoe around an obvious thing. Or he's going to have to spoil the end of progressive L4 campaign for us, which is going to be interesting which path he chooses. Con blueballing us with the Underworld side of the arc. I mean, yes, like the past 3 volumes have all had the same ending, the same cliffhanger, but at least with the ending of 6, it's actually moving somewhere. So I'd say that Con has been taken care of to a certain extent. We don't know what's gonna come in the next book. for all I care, you know, the Emperor Vestarath could just be taken out within 5 minutes by Kirito and the Integrity Knights, and then we have random stuff once again. That's not gonna be fun if it happens. Can't wait to read Asuna Angst about Kismet. Exactly. We have Yu-Gi-Oh for Kirito and Kismet for Asuna, don't we? Pros. I'm very happy to see character relationships dynamics with one another explored beyond. That is actually a great point. I don't think anyone mentioned specifically the relationships. It's really nice side characters are getting some screen time, but their dynamics, and this is also what Caliber did, which was 1/3 of I'm gonna stop repeating that one. But yeah, seeing the characters interact with each other, that's a great point. Like, whether I enjoy Shilika being the protagonist or not, I still enjoy her interactions with Shinon, Lisbeth, and all the other characters. I don't think Shilika should be the character the camera follows as the main character, but I still very much enjoy Shilika interacting with each other, with other people. That's what I'm trying to say. I think I repeated the exact same thing twice with slight differences. I was just trying to get it across a little bit better, but I felt like it didn't work. Almost 3 hours. That's normal. Brain is a soup right now. I'm smelling a tremendous amount of indecision from Reki when it comes to what he wants to do with the plot itself. That is true. And that, I feel like that is also the reason why we have so many tangents in the story, with constant mysteries popping up, because Reki wants to plant all of these seeds, but he's not exactly sure which way to go properly. And remember, we still have Pooh's body that has never been found. And I'm pretty sure Doc is an Accel World reader as well. So that is probably factoring into the opinions as well. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to Reki dragging the plot. Dislike Kirito's hypocrisy, Star King, if you want to split hairs, using administrator's methodology of life preservation on himself and others while being the main person to also chastise her for doing the same to extend her lifespan, albeit her atrocities are well documented. Does this continue? Okay, it's more replies from others, but the thing is, like, the hypocrisy about the life freezing comes up so often naturally as the main argument in these points. But the fact of the matter is there's so many things about Kirito's remarks about Star King, what the Star King has done and what Kirito does not approve. Most of them are actually played as jokes. So many times you'll find something where Star King has done something, like the elevator up to the top of the central cathedral. There's a secret mechanism where you have to activate to be able to reach the top side. And once Kirito figures it out, he's like, what kind of an idiot designed this? And you know, it's the Star King who designed it. So once, yeah, I will chuckle. Yeah, you're an idiot, Kirito, you're right. Twice, I'm like, yeah, you did it. Haha, very funny. Third time, fourth time, fifth time, when all of these things are constantly coming, I think that self-awareness is very much hurting. Like the joke is no longer functioning when you repeat the exact same joke 5 times. And it just starts pointing out really stupid stuff that shouldn't exist. And when the joke is not working, I'm like, yeah, that is actually very stupid. Why did he do that? That makes no sense. The moment the joke wears off and you start questioning, it starts falling apart entirely. That shouldn't happen. Then why did it happen? Stop making things like that happen. Like the hypocrisy, it goes beyond the obvious example of the life preservation and deep sleep. That's just something I wanted to mention. To be honest, at first I wasn't a big fan of Eolyne given what happened to Yuju, and even now part of me is worried he's just a copy-paste of him. Meant to keep us Yuji fans intrigued, but I'm at least curious now to see how they'll handle his relationship with... I think their relationship with Kirito, they're handling it perfectly. Like, I love every single scene these two are together. It's really enjoyable. It's the mystery around Eolyne that once it's removed, it's gonna be a shitstorm. Whichever way we go, it's gonna be a shitstorm. Alright, Felusi, whichever translation you want to go with, not being able to use sword skills. That's an incredibly interesting bit that I think it was in Unital Ring 4 maybe, so 2 volumes before. Could be 5 as well. Let me see, it should have a picture. Yeah, okay, in 5 we're already on top of the central cathedral, so it has to be 4. So it's been 2 volumes before that it's mentioned that Felusi can't use sword skills. And Kirito still keeps mentioning every once in a while, remembering, oh, this kid can't use sword skills, I need to look into that, but nothing happens. Then why do you keep bringing it up then? That is a very interesting point that I want to know more of. But if you're not gonna progress that thread, please don't mention it. We have 50 different B plots already muddying the entire scene. Just get to it when you get to it, and until then, let it stay in the back of the mind. Yeah, thank you for mentioning it, Polsky. That's actually something I wanted to mention. I'll say my... Alright, this is Plintesis. I actually responded to this. I say my 2 biggest problems with the SAO were solved in Unital Ring. Reki's approach of keeping the readers in the dark and bombarding them with a massive info dump when the world building is finished. Definitely correct about that one. Like, the amount of information, the general world building of Alicization, I think it was great, but the Cardinal's info dump that took the final 1/3 of Turning and then Rising, the beginning of Rising, it was too much. We were indeed kept too much in the dark about the context of the Axiom Church, and it was a lot of lore to be dumped upon. So with that specific criticism, with that context, I do agree with that one. However, I do not agree this was solved in Unital Ring, which you'll see somewhere in my response. Yeah, there we go. To be frank, we're still very much in the dark in Unital Ring, and thusly, it is still too early about being happy that there is no massive info dump just yet. And I will actually add to this that the premise of Unital Ring's story is literally having a massive info dump. The premise of Unital Ring is literally reach the center of the world and I'll answer all of your questions. Which is the exact same as Accel World. Completely on a different tangent. So your reward is literally the massive info dump. So I don't agree with the solution part of the thing. Just because we didn't see a massive info dump yet doesn't mean there is no massive info dump. It's just a little bit into the future. Literally the end goal of the saga. Same thing applies to most side characters, having minimal plot importance and getting sidelined, mainly Liz, Shilika, Yui, Agil, and Klein. Both of these issues were fixed, though Klein still got done dirty for some reason. When was Klein done dirty? Don't exactly remember. Klein is quite often around. As for the bad part, I feel like Ricky is slowly writing himself into a corner. Eolyne is really intriguing, and I feel like he has a ton of potential, but his handling, his character is like treading on thin ice. It's not even thin ice. You're literally there with dynamites either side, and you are forced to take one turn or the other. He could easily become just Yuji. He is just Yuji bait. Like, no need to be shy about these. He is already Yuji. The fact that members of Alization's cast are still here despite the 2 on EOP, that's common complaint. Is also something that doesn't sit right with me, neither with me. This is Reki we're talking about though, so I still have faith in him not to fumble the bag, especially when we have the climax of climaxes in Alicization lasting, called this blind opt. It is, I will be honest, it is blind optimism because I talk with Accel World readers quite a lot as well. It is blind optimism, and certain downsides of Reki is well known to many of his fans for over a decade, as well as Reki himself. But yeah, and generally I definitely agree with the criticism towards very clear criticism towards Alicization here. It is true. It's true. Where was I? Over back here, one more back. Oh, that's all. That's all. How about opinions? Where did I even share my opinions? Threads, volume 27 discussion. Yeah, here. Oh right, my entire incarnation deep dive. I can actually make entirely separate videos by using these. I probably should at some point, but okay, let's give it a try. Okay, so there's one point that I really hate about, welcome back Dryalga. There's one point that I really hate towards the end. There were these things called incarnate bombs, where the Emperor Vestarath is attacking the Axiom Church, and let's get this straight. The cathedral has passive regen ability. It heals itself. So, the thing is, this is a system level privilege. It's literally a perk on the object if you want to think about other games. However, just to level up the incarnate levels, you know, the thing I mentioned with Last Airbender and Korra prior. They need to do something. They need to now make it breakable, and everyone's using incarnation. And what do? Oh, there are now these things called incarnate bombs. Where's actually the beginning of my criticism? This is something that annoyed me very much. Okay, yeah, there we go. The incarnate weapons aspect. You see, first off, we start with incarnation. Incarnation is between you and the main visualizer. Incarnate weapons, a muddled concept, let's say. It first came up in Unital Ring 4 with the Percy scene you mentioned. I didn't dwell on it too much. It was fine, you know. It's not a big significance. However, as I said, incarnation comes from a floodlight. It's literally your memory data. You have to be directly connected to the main visualizer in a certain way to be able to cast incarnation, which is exactly why it is temporary. It fades away. You cannot box incarnation. So what happens is, now the cathedral has self-regenerating effects, which we assumed prior to be system level abilities that Quinella cast because she had access to the system privileges and all that kind of stuff. However, in this scene, supposedly Emperor Vestarath is attacking with incarnate bombs at the central cathedral, which is overwriting its regenerative abilities. Multiple problems with that. First off, incarnate bombs. What are incarnate bombs? How did you put incarnation in the bomb? You know, we can start with that one. That doesn't work. Secondly, it is specifically mentioned to be overwriting the incarnate regenerative abilities of the central cathedral. The regenerative capacities of the central cathedral are not incarnate abilities. If they were the incarnation of Quinella, those regenerative abilities would have stopped 200 years ago. And furthermore, in a paragraph or two later, it's literally mentioned that there are no spatial resources around for them to heal themselves anyways, further telling us that, hey, the regenerative abilities, they're not incarnate abilities, they are normal sacred art system level stuff. Ay. Like, the whole concept of these bombs are not necessary. We know the walls are still destructible. You don't need incarnate weapons to destroy the walls. That's not how it works. It's just good enough burst damage and the wall is just gonna go off. There's nothing about incarnation here. But this is what's becoming of incarnation. It's just a stupid, meaningless power scaling thing to make something look as if it's exciting. It would be fucking exciting if 10 normal bombs hit the cathedral at the same time and actually cause damage, you know? That would be more exciting than this. It's just incarnation. At this point, everything is incarnation. And it's taken every single stake away, because if you can go this far with incarnation, what stops you? Everything is possible. Everything's gonna happen. And once everything is possible, the result is, hey, whatever happens, everything's gonna be alright. Where's the tension? I'm just gonna yell louder and I'm gonna be more powerful than you. I got a lot of other criticisms here as well. Like, yeah, things that actually contradict the previously established lore. I remember this pretty clearly. It stated that the Black Emperors wanted the life freezing art, which is why they rebelled, is what the text says as is in Unital Ring. However, that is not the case, because by the time they rebelled, life freezing art was already lost. Like all these kinds of things, they are all... Am I muted? I really hope I'm not muted. No, I'm not muted. I can see. You scared me, man. Don't do that again. That was scary. But like all these small bits and pieces, like one thing is clearly injected for something else to happen and steamroll into something. And it steamrolls into something, but the problem is the stick you put at the beginning to roll everything around, that thing in the middle, it doesn't exist. It's wrong. It contradicts everything you said before. And once that happens, this thing in the middle, it just crumbles, and everything that snowballed from it is just meaningless. It's wrong. Those kinds of stuff. There's so many of them in Unital Ring that this is actually a good idea. I'm gonna go through my comments here and then make separate videos on these. I can't reasonably cover it in a live stream, going with just winging it, trying to find everything. That would be terrible. So okay, now's your time to chat. Once chat slows down and there's nothing more for me to respond, I will wrap up the stream. And nobody told me that our background music is over. There we go. Back with more Integral Factor soundtrack. Maybe these bombs imagine that these are normal. That's the thing. Bombs don't get that luxury. Bomb is an object. The only way that can happen is the Yu-Gi-Oh! And the Blue Rose Sword case, where memory of a certain person is within that object, which I'm pretty sure I called it somewhere a pseudo-fluctlight. So not a real fluctlight, but a fragment that can act as one. And that's the only way. It's what happened with the Blue Rose Sword, as well as the crystals that were on top of the central cathedral. But aside from that, an object cannot cast incarnation. An object does not have a fluctlight. It does not function as a fluctlight. It was kind of similar to Kirito opening Obsidia Palace door with sword skill. Didn't he just Warple strike it? Moon Cradle, that's B19. Oh, that's another bookmark. I have so many bookmarks from Book Depository, but my favorite one is still the one they did for Witcher. I'm not even interested in Witcher, but the bookmark was really cool. Let's see. Yeah, he's just smashing the door with Warple Strike now. Or was it that he was imagining a key as a separate scene? But again, that's still Kirito doing something, not the objects doing something, so that's a completely separate thing anyways. I'm pretty sure there's an incarnation level nuke in Accel World, but it's been long since the last time read, so maybe but I wouldn't be surprised if there is. Like, this is Reiki we're talking about. If I have a criticism towards SAO, that's probably applying to Accel World as well, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did the exact same thing. I mean, you can even see this in his current work, when he is doing something, like when he's writing the book, at the same time he was going through the Aria or the Scherzo movie scripts. You can actually tell, because there are so many of the same concepts that are shared by the two separate products. Similar things happen when he writes a progressive volume at the same time as a Unital Ring volume. You will see random references from the other one he's writing at that exact same time, just popping up randomly on the other one because it's in his short-term memory at the time. Like his stuff bleeds over quite a lot. I'm not all that knowledgeable about Accel World, so pointing me to specific events that happened in Accel World, that's not gonna... I won't be able to follow you. I'll put it that way. If you want to boil it down, yes, incarnation is imagination and willpower. Conscious and subconscious. I think Ricky should slow down from new mysteries and close the previous threads. Yeah, tying down a couple of them wouldn't be a bad idea. I also hope they explain about how they got a keyhole shape without Alice's sword there. That's brought up so much, but I feel like that's something they can do just from system logs. I think the solution is simple and that's a trivial matter. It is a very glaring missing piece if you look from the surface level, but the solution is so simple. Also, I would also add, you know, they are in given shapes, but we don't know if the trigger is even the shape. Like, looking at it from a system perspective, I just say that's a check for the object ID, because that is also unique. So once you plop the swords there, I'd imagine it just scans the object, hey, that is WS blah blah blah, the numbers, and that is the correct sword, check passed, done. Like, the shape would be just there to guide the user to that specific slot, or to give them a hint rather than the actual check itself. I mean, traumas, they are subconscious will stuff, yeah. Maybe whoever was sending these bombs was using incarnation, I don't know, just... Yeah, I know the sentiment. Ped also tried to do it a lot. The problem is you can explain everything if you want to, but it's just if it feels wrong at a core level. But yeah, based on what I'm saying right now, you can clearly see there are countless aspects going into different things. Earlier I was saying, hey, you don't need to explain every single technical detail or engineering, it's fine, it's better off as magic. And now I'm saying, hey, please explain this. What gives? You know, it's the kind of things, it's very much context dependent. If it's something at its core that's going against what you have previously established, maybe you are better off explaining it rather than saying, hey, it's incarnate weapons, they exist. Oh my god, 3 hours 13 minutes. My throat is dry, my nose is actually starting to hurt, the back of my nose, because my throat is dry. How are we doing? Does anyone have specific questions? If not, I do want to wrap up the stream because I overshot my social quota, speaking quota, way too much today. You know, it's already hard being energetic. Ah, thank you for watching, man. Thank you. I mean, a lot of you have been here since the beginning, so I'm the one who should thank you. When will we be seeing volume 28? Probably 2024. After Accel World, at the very least. literally no information. I can't gauge. Like, don't trust me saying that. It can be 2025. Who knows? But yeah. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much for joining, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye.